Chapter 869. The few of them were startled. After looking at each other, they cupped their hands together and said some words of congratulations or auspicious opening. After the pleasantries, Wang Gui asked tentatively, "May I know what kind of business the world commerce will be relying on the opening day?" The other three also looked like they were all ears. Yu Qianqiu knew about this old tradition of the world commerce. Normally, on the opening day of a world commerce, they would bring out a business that could stabilize the scene as their main focus. They would also trade at a price slightly lower than the market price, in order to make business flourish and people flourish. For example, if Skyward Palace opened, it would definitely use immortal pills as its main focus, while Mythical Fire Palace would use refined immortal weapons as its main focus. In short, they had to come up with a business that could withstand the test and not cause panic buying due to the low price, causing them to run out of stock on the opening day. In the immortal realm, this was a very important matter for a world commerce that did business. It had almost become an old rule. If they could withstand the test, it meant that the world commerce's strength and confidence were extraordinary. If they couldn't withstand the test, they would become a joke. Being forced to close on the opening day, if that wasn't a joke, then what was? This kind of thing often happened when some newly established world commerce opened. Because all kinds of businesses in the immortal realm had already been opened, the latecomers would be suspected of stealing business. Often, the large sects that did business with them would deliberately embarrass the small world commerce on the opening day and make a large purchase, forcing them to close on the opening day. Yu Qianqiu calmly opened his mouth and bit off a mouthful of meat from the iron skewer. He drank a mouthful of wine and swallowed it, then smiled faintly and said, "Elders, what do you think of my world commerce using immortal herbs as the main focus?" Immortal herbs? The few of them were all stunned. In the immortal realm, there were no world commerce or sects that specialized in immortal herbs. These things could only be sold if they were picked. In addition, there was a limit to their growth cycle. Other than a few sects that were proficient in alchemy for generations, they would spend a lot of time growing them. Generally, other than the period after the Divine Ruin Realm closed, there were very few situations where they were sold on a large scale. Huafeng laughed heartily and said, "Sect Master Yu really knows how to pick a time." He actually chose to open the shop with immortal herbs right after the Divine Ruin Realm closes. This is indeed a good idea. It can greatly reduce the risk of panic buying. You can't say that. Ye Donglu shook his head slowly. Although the immortal world doesn't have any merchant associations or sects that only deal in immortal herbs, and it's unlikely that a sect will try to take you down a notch on that day, Sect Master Yu, I'm afraid you still have to stock up a little more. It's better to be safe than sorry. What if someone deliberately comes to cause trouble? Huafeng looked at Ye Donglu and chuckled. Opening with an immortal herb as the main item, if someone wants to buy it wantonly, I think it's most likely your Skyward Palace. Think about it, what your Skyward Palace needs the most are immortal herbs. In addition, on the opening day of the World Chamber of Commerce, they will sell them cheaply. If you don't buy them in bulk now, when will you? The other two also laughed, and Ye Donglu said with a bitter smile, "I really can't guarantee this, because it's quite possible. If the sect really wants to order a large purchase, I can't stop it. I'm just afraid that I'll feel embarrassed when I meet Sect Master Yu in the future. Elder Yu worries too much." Yu Qianqiu said with a smile, "The reason why we dare to open the World Chamber of Commerce this time is because we have the strong support of Wei Fu Wang and Baiyun Mountain Lord. We can't guarantee that the main items we prepare will be able to deal with the impact on the opening day, but it's barely enough. As for the rest, we'll leave it to fate. What does it matter if we close the door on that day? I don't care." The reason why he invited these people was to deliberately leak the news first. He wanted everyone to know that the immortal herbs in his hands mainly came from Yunpeng and Wei Chuanxiu, so that there wouldn't be too many people thinking about him. Everyone laughed it off and consciously stopped dwelling on this topic. In fact, everyone knew that the opening of the World Chamber of Commerce this time wouldn't be so smooth. Even if Skyward Palace didn't make a move, Heartless Palace wouldn't let it go. During this time, Heartless Palace hadn't been doing well. Not only had they lost a lot of face in the Divine Ruin Realm, even the grandson of the high priest had been killed, and even his corpse hadn't been found. And everyone in the immortal world knew that Yu Qianzhou and Heartless Palace had formed a grudge. Coincidentally, the World Chamber of Commerce was opening at this time. Based on Heartless Palace's style of seeking revenge for the smallest grievance, it would definitely be difficult to be kind. If it wasn't for Yun Peng and Wei Chuanxiu holding down the fort in the World Chamber of Commerce, not to mention openly, they would also secretly attack Yu Qianzhou. Fortunately, there were these two experts holding down the fort, but it was estimated that it would be difficult to avoid embarrassment this time, and the twists and turns in the future would definitely be endless. Late at night, the mood was over, and the wine was drunk. The flickering charcoal fire slowly extinguished, and the people gathered on the roof also dispersed. When Lanfeng slowly walked away from the white jade railing, leaving behind a lonely and graceful figure. Facing the night wind, Lu Yanqing casually pulled out the hairpin that tied her beautiful hair, and her fine black hair fluttered in the night wind. The beautiful hair that had been destroyed had once again grown back to its original state, but it was unknown whether that heart was the same as before. Leaning against the white jade railing, Lu Yanqing slowly turned her head. From her fluttering beautiful hair, she could see that Yu Qianzhou was sitting alone under the night sky, supporting his head with one hand and frowning in thought. She really wanted to go over and ask him. With his current cultivation, staying in the human world was enough for him to be free and unfettered. Was this not good? Why did he have to be so busy and never stop? Just as she was hesitating, Wei Chuanxiu and Yun Peng walked over together and sat opposite to Yu Qianzhou. The two of them glanced at Lu Yanqing, and the expressions of the three of them changed. It was obvious that they were talking about something through voice transmission. As Yu Qianzhou shook his head with a faint smile, the three of them ended their conversation. Yu Qianzhou, who was about to get up and leave, saw Lu Yanqing alone and was slightly startled. Then he nodded and smiled calmly and quickly left. Wei Chuanxiu also followed and left. Lu Yanqing gently bit her lips and inadvertently met Yun Peng's gaze. Yun Peng's eyes flashed with a hint of amazement, and the two of them nodded their heads slightly. Then they turned back to look at the confused night sky. A woman in green was on one side, and a man in white was on the other. From that night onwards, the two figures on the rooftop were no longer alone. However, one of them was always on this side, while the other was on the other side. Every time they met, they would only nod and greet each other. Neither of them spoke a single word. The next day, the elegant Nongzhu brought 10 people with her. Each of them carried a large pile of printed leaflets to the central square of the fantasy Immortal city to distribute. Nongzhu really couldn't figure out what Yu Qianzhou's brain was made of. Why did he always do such strange things? In the end, after a day, not only did they have enough of being rolled their eyes, they also had to squeeze out a smile to receive the rolling eyes and mocking remarks. The muscles on their faces almost stiffened from smiling. When they thought that they would have to live like this for 10 days, these people almost broke down. If it weren't for Yu Qianzhou, the torture envoy, holding the fort, everyone would have quit long ago. However, the effect of such an alternative publicity was huge. It more or less caused a sensation in the fantasy Immortal city. The news of the World Commerce Company's opening in half a month quickly spread throughout the entire Immortal realm. If this happened in the past, everyone would definitely be dismissive. Who would know who the World Commerce Company was? However, Yu Qianzhou's own little reputation, coupled with the sensation caused by the waterfall carvings and the tall building, brought an unimaginable effect to this publicity. The commotion made it seem like it was really going to happen. Bang! A table was smashed into smithereens. In the illusionary Immortal city's Heartless Palace's branch, Heartless Palace's elder Feng Jiu-Ru sneered repeatedly, "This Yu Qianzhou really knows how to cause trouble. One thing after another, there's no end to it. Looks like he'll be a scourge sooner or later." Her disciple Sun Luan, who was also the branch leader here, looked at the smashed table and cupped his hands. "Master, please calm down. It's just a mere Yu Qianzhou. There's no need to get angry over him. If you want to take care of him, you can do it any time." Humph. Feng Jiru glanced over coldly. "Any time? Then why can't you even put a few spies in the World Commerce Company? The moment you show your face, you get wiped out. Do you think he's easy to take care of? Just because he has Yunpeng and Wei Chuanxiu by his side. If the sect's consecrators don't show up, even I can't do anything to him. Are you stronger than me? Sun Luan was speechless. He thought about how useless his position as a branch leader was. Because of the importance of this location, the sect had sent an additional elder to oversee it. Furthermore, this elder just had to be his master. His days were completely different from the other branch leaders, who lived comfortable lives in charge of an area. Sun Luan paused and squeezed out a smile. Master, isn't the World Commerce Company going to open for business? Why don't we buy it wantonly and force them to close on the same day? That way, Wei Chuanxiu and Yunpeng will lose face. Anyway, they won't dare to do anything to us. This is the good idea you came up with? Feng Jiuru snorted and then added heavily, stupid. Our Immortal World's #1 sect is playing with a small sect. It's like slapping our own face and adding glory to the other party. If you want to play, you should play with something worthy. Master is right. Please enlighten me, Master. Sun Luan smiled apologetically, but he was cursing in his heart. No matter what you say, you're right. I won't say it, all right? Feng Jiuru paced with her hands behind her back and sneered. What an ingenious idea. He actually left words on the waterfall and even made an eye-catching skyscraper. If a sect leader took a fancy to the World Commerce's mountain and wanted to exchange territory with them, so they issued a challenge, what do you think the outcome would be? Sun Luan's eyes immediately lit up. He clapped his hands and said, Master is wise. It would be even better if we challenge him on the day he opens his shop. With his deity transformation cultivation, he will definitely lose. But then he frowned and said hesitantly, Master. I'm afraid ordinary sects won't dare to do this because Yu Qianshou has Wei Chuanxiu and Yunpeng by his side. If they really did that, it would be the same as slapping their faces. These two experts definitely won't do anything on the spot, but the people who challenge him will definitely be afraid of revenge from these two. I'm afraid no one will dare to do this. Chapter 870. Don't boost the morale of others and belittle our own. Feng Jiuru sneered, my heartless palace has as many experts as there are clouds in the sky, the #1 sect in the immortal world. Let me ask you, who is more afraid of my heartless palace or those two loners? Sun Luan immediately flattered, of course it's our heartless palace. If you really provoke our heartless palace, there will be no place for Wei Chuanxiu and Yunpeng in the immortal world. Provoke? Feng Jiuru murmured and said in a deep voice, the High Deacon has been provoked to the point where he can't find a place to vent his anger. If we can't even take care of Yu Qianshou and attract the High Deacon's attention, then it won't just be Yu Qianshou who will be in trouble. Both you and my disciple will be implicated. You know how terrifying the High Priest is. Sun Luan shivered when he heard that. He thought of that old man who had eyes like a hawk. Just a glance from him could make people shiver. Feng Jiuru's expression became firm and she ordered, help me contact the sect masters of the 4 islands of Lake Light. Tell them to come see me as soon as possible. Tell them that I have a gift for them. Don't tell them what it is for now. Sun Luan said with a smile, these 4 poor sects don't have the money to establish a foothold in the illusionary immortal city. With the support of our heartless palace, they will be very willing to take over the territory of the World Commerce Association. Let's see who has the ability to snatch it. Disciple will go contact them now. The majestic Myriad Saint Mountain towered into the sky. At the peak of the misty mountain, there was a simple and majestic palace called Myriad Saint Palace. The palace was cold and quiet. Very few people came to disturb them. Wan Ling, who was wearing plain clothes, lightly crossed the threshold and walked into the depths of the palace. She slowly walked to the steps in front of her and bowed, Grandfather. Are you looking for me? On the cold and aloof sapphire stone platform, Wan Busheng, who had white hair and a ruddy complexion, opened his eyes. A trace of kindness flashed in his clear eyes. He waved to the people below and said, Ling, come up and talk to Grandpa. Wan Ling's face bloomed with a smile. She lifted her white dress and ran up to sit on Wan Bushing's jade couch. Her long hair cascaded down like a waterfall. She held her head in her arms and looked at Wan Bushing with a smile. "What does Grandpa want Ling to say to you?" In Wan Gu Tong, other than Wan Bushing, only Wan Ling dared to casually sit on this jade couch. Even Wan Bushing's son didn't dare to touch it. It was clear how much Wan Bushing doted on Wan Ling. Wan Bushing raised his hand to touch Wan Ling's face and said with a doting expression, "Ling, you really look like your grandmother. Even your temper and character are so similar." Wan Ling grabbed his hand and put it on her face. She smiled innocently and said, "Grandpa misses Grandma again." Wan Bushing smiled as he pulled his hand back, pinching her nose and shaking it. "Strange girl, always causing trouble for me. Don't pinch my nose." Wan Ling pushed Wan Bushing's hand away, frowning, "Grandfather. From now on, you are not allowed to pinch my nose." Wan Bushing was stunned. Seeing the resentment on Wan Ling's face, he burst out laughing. "Still holding a grudge against the person who pinched your nose and made you cry? Grandpa isn't him. How did you implicate Grandpa? Ling was taken advantage of by someone. How can you laugh as a grandfather?" Wan Ling complained. Suddenly, she grabbed Wan Bushing's arm, gritting her teeth. "Grandfather. Help me think of a way to get rid of that Yu Qianqiu, okay?" A long sigh sounded in the hall. Wan Bushing shook his head. "Getting rid of a small Yu Qianqiu is easy, but that immortal Emperor Jin Tai behind him is not someone grandfather can afford to offend. Grandfather is not his opponent. For the sake of our family, you have to suffer." The hall became silent. After a long time, Wan Ling bit her lips and said, "The immortal emperor has ruled the celestial world for so many years. Is there no one who can challenge him and let him continue to rule? This is too unfair to the people of the celestial world. You can say this here, don't spread it outside." Wan Bushing's expression became serious, then he smiled and said, "Let's not talk about this. What's new in the celestial world recently? Tell me about it." "What's new?" "The entire celestial world is under the pressure of the immortal emperor, so what can happen? At most, it's just some small fights." Wan Ling complained. She seemed to have a lot of resentment towards the high and mighty immortal emperor. Pausing, he continued, "There are a few big events. The great consecrator of Passionless Palace, Zhu Yun Xian, and the head of Xiaoyao Palace, Chai Xiaoyao, caused a ruckus here. Now, they are searching for the person who killed their first grandson. Secondly, the great commander of external affairs of the Immortal Palace, Wu Xiong, has taken a fancy to the daughter of a small merchant. They have already set the wedding date. Finally, that guy's World Merchant Association is about to open. Yes. The last matter is the reason why I asked you to come." Wan Bushing frowned and said, "On the day of the World Merchant Association's opening, you should personally send a congratulatory gift." Wan Ling was startled. She immediately jumped off the jade couch and lost her temper. "I'm not going. I hate seeing that person. Grandfather. If you force me to go, don't blame me if I can't control myself and cause trouble on the day of the World Merchant Association's opening. Ling. Stop messing around." Wan Bushing floated down from the jade couch. He landed on the ground and stared at the surging sea of clouds outside the door. He slowly said, "Don't think that our Wan Gu Tong is famous in the celestial world for a while. In reality, it's lonely at the top. The bigger a sect is, the easier it is for us to attract the attention of the Immortal Palace. This is also why the sect masters of large sects like us don't easily come out. Since we already know that Yu Qianqiu is a secret agent sent by Old Master Jin, we should build a good relationship with him. As the saying goes, it's better to squash enmity than keep it alive. Who knows, maybe one day our Wan Gu Tong will run into some trouble and need his help. This Yu Qianqiu is so useful, why don't we make use of him?" Ling. Do you understand grandfather's meaning? Oh. Wan Ling pouted unhappily, "I'll listen to you." Seeing that she didn't agree readily, Wan Bushing smiled and said, "Ling. Is Grandpa Xian annoyed? If Grandpa Xian is really annoyed, then hurry up and find someone you like to marry. As long as you like him, Grandpa doesn't care about the other party's background. I will support you fully. Otherwise, it's not good for an old lady to stay by Grandpa's side all the time. Wan Ling's face immediately turned red, and a flurry of punches landed on Wan Bushing's body, complaining, "Grandpa hates me, and wants to chase me away." Wan Bushing laughed heartily, and with a wave of his hand, a ray of light shot out from his fingers, directly binding Wan Ling's wrists together. No matter how hard Wan Ling struggled, she couldn't break free. Wan Bushing clasped his hands behind his back, and with a solemn expression, he said, "Grandpa isn't joking. I'm asking you now, do you have a man you like? Don't tell Grandpa that you've never liked any man, Grandpa won't believe you. After all, you're a normal woman." The moment these words came out, Wan Ling immediately stopped struggling. Instead, she became a little bashful. Wan Bushing's eyes lit up, and he pretended to be angry. "If you don't say it, then Grandpa will decide for you. At that time, don't blame Grandpa for randomly choosing someone to marry." "No." Wan Ling hurriedly stopped him. She knew that her grandfather was also a decisive person. Otherwise, he wouldn't have established such a big family business, and it was very likely that he would do as he said. "Humph." Wan Bushing snorted coldly, "Then tell me honestly, do you have a man you like? Otherwise, you know Grandpa's temper." Wan Ling was bashful for a long time, and finally lowered her head and whispered, "Yes." Wan Bushing's eyes lit up, and he said strangely, "What kind of talent can make my Ling wait for so many years? Tell Grandpa. As long as my Ling likes someone, Grandpa will help you catch that man even if it's an old man. Don't worry, Grandpa is not pedantic. Even if it's a married man, as long as you like him, Grandpa promises to snatch him for you. There must be a way to make him your man honestly. Tell me, who is it? Who wants to snatch someone's married man?" Wan Ling stamped her foot. The redness on her face had already spread to her neck. She buried her head and muttered, "Actually, I've only seen him once, and I don't even know where he's from or what his name is. How do you expect me to tell you who he is?" Wan Bushing let out a long "oh," and then said strangely, "Then it's love at first sight, heavens. To be able to make my family's eccentric Ling fall in love at first sight, how outstanding must that person be? Don't worry, at most, Grandpa will personally make a move. I'll definitely help you get that man you like." "Grandpa." Wan Ling stamped her foot again, the shyness on her face seeped into her bones. "Waha. As long as you have someone you like, it'll be easy. As long as you have someone you like, then I can rest easy. You made me think that there was something wrong with you." Wan Bushing heaved a long sigh of relief, patting his chest. "Tell Grandpa, when and where did you meet him, and what does he look like? As long as we have these few clues, with our Wan Gu Tong's influence, finding that person won't be a problem. Don't worry, Grandpa won't hesitate to use all of Wan Gu Tong's power to help you get him." Wan Ling's body trembled, biting her lip as she looked at Wan Bushing. She knew that if Wan Bushing really gave the order, they would really be able to find that person. Her heart was beating fast as she said in a low voice, "That was 1806 years ago. At that time, Speaking to this point, she bit her tongue and stopped. Her expression became somewhat perplexed, as if everything that happened at that time had happened just yesterday. It was in a remote valley deep in the mountains. Wan Ling was passing by this place when she accidentally discovered a pond with rippling waves. Attracted by the clear water, seeing that there was no one around, she couldn't resist taking off all her clothes and jumping into the pond to play. Just as she was immersed in her emotions, she suddenly noticed that there seemed to be a person standing in the reflection of the mountain. Chapter 871. This discovery scared Wan Ling so much that she stood in the pool, not daring to move. She didn't even dare to raise her head to look. She hugged her chest and kept telling herself that this must be an illusion. When the rippling pool water finally calmed down like a mirror, she could clearly see that on the mountain peak reflected in the water, a man in white was standing elegantly on a tree. He seemed to be staring at her naked body in the pool water. Wan Ling was scared out of her wits and let out a shrill scream, scaring the birds in the mountain to fly away. After realizing that she was still naked under someone else's eyes, Wanling raised her hand and summoned the clothes on the shore to wrap herself up. She hid in the water and didn't dare to come out. She looked at the white-clothed man standing on the treetop with fear and trepidation. It was a man full of scholarly aura. His face was extraordinarily handsome and his body was slender. In addition to the white robe, he completely looked like a scholar. Wanling had never been so naked in front of any man before. At this moment, she was extremely shy and scared. However, what was annoying was that although the man looked gentle, his skin was not ordinary thick. He stood on the treetop without moving and looked at her with a slight smile on his face. He didn't feel ashamed at all, as if she, Wanling, should be naked for him to see. Under the shame and anger, Wanling finally mustered up the courage to shout, "Where did this shameless person come from? Hurry up and leave. If you keep looking, this lady will gouge out your pair of thieving eyes." Perhaps her threat had an effect. The scholar on the treetop suddenly disappeared without a sound. Even with Wanling's cultivation, she didn't know how he left. Wanling, who was hugging her clothes and was about to flee, was looking around cautiously when she was suddenly startled. She didn't know when the scholar had appeared behind her. He was quietly stepping on the surface of the water and looking at her with a smile. "Ah!" Wanling, who was in the pool, immediately let out a frightening scream. The scholar looked at her with a smile and ignored her, letting her continue to scream. It was also impossible for Wanling to continue screaming. Once she stopped screaming, she wrapped the clothes around her chest with one hand and desperately waved her palm at the man to send out a ray of light. This palm strike could be said to have gathered all of her cultivation, but the scholar still stood there with a smile, completely ignoring her attack. Invisible ripples appeared in the space before him, and Wanling's powerful palm strike was like a clay ox entering the sea. All the power disappeared without a trace, as if nothing had happened at all. Wanling instantly understood that she was not the opponent's opponent at all. She immediately screamed, "Help!" She didn't care anymore. She hugged her clothes and fled quickly. However, something even scarier happened. Wanling clearly saw the scenery around her fly by. She didn't know how far she had escaped, but when she stopped, she found that she was no different from not moving at all. He was still in the pool, only that he had run out of the pool and his feet were on the surface of the pool. In this way, the other party would be able to see his body more clearly. "Ah!" Wanling screamed crazily as if she had seen a ghost. However, she was horrified to find that she couldn't hear her voice at all. The scholar opposite her walked over with a smile, raised his hand and pointed at her lightly. The clothes that wrapped around her body suddenly disappeared inexplicably. What happened next almost made Wanling collapse. She wanted to squat down and hug her arms to cover her body, but she found that she couldn't control her body at all. Her thoughts were very clear, and she didn't realize that her body was being held hostage by an external force. However, she shamelessly stretched out her arms, exposing her chest to the other party. Wanling watched as the other party's slender fingers touched her body. She couldn't close her eyes even if she wanted to. She could feel the other party's cold hands moving around her body, touching her full breasts and perky buttocks one by one. Wanling immediately burst into tears and choked, "Stop, why are you crying?" The scholar appeared in front of her and gently hooked her chin with his finger. He smiled faintly and said, "There are so many women who want to strip for me, but I don't care about them. You should feel lucky that it's a coincidence today." His voice was very pleasant to the ears, and his faint tone was filled with unquestionable confidence. It was as if everyone should bow down to him. As he spoke, Wanling's heart stirred. Her breathing quickened, and her heart thumped non-stop. The other party's deep and wise gaze was pressing in. Her chin was hooked up, and their lips were pressed together. The scent that belonged to a man made Wanling a little confused. The other party's lips were a little cold. Unknowingly, Wanling found that she had opened her lips, and their tongues were mixed together. She was actually a little infatuated with his nimble tongue. It was also at this moment that Wanling found that her body had regained its freedom, and she could move. She could have pushed him away, but she impulsively made a bold decision. She took the initiative to hug the other party, and kissed him passionately, hoping that the other party would take the next step. However, the other party seemed to be a little too rational. In this moment of passion, he actually slowly pushed her away, and told her with a smile, "We've only met by chance, so we should stop. It's enough that we've tasted it. The women I've kissed can hate me, but they can't be sad because of me. If we continue, I'm afraid you'll be sad." Wan Ling was also a woman who was used to seeing the world. She was just panicking before, but now that she had calmed down, she more or less realized that the other party didn't have any evil intentions towards her, so she boldly said, "In the immortal world, there aren't many people who dare to treat me like this. You've already treated me like this, so you have to be responsible for me." "Be responsible for you?" The scholar shook his head and chuckled. He looked at her luxuriant lower body and teased, "I don't think I've done anything excessive to you. It's just a hug and a kiss, and you actually want me to be responsible for you? You're making things difficult for me." Wan Ling bit her lips and said, "I don't care. I've never let other men see my body. You've seen it and you've touched it, so you have to be responsible for me. Otherwise, I won't let you go." What a big tone. "You're actually threatening me." The scholar shook his head and chuckled. He turned around and said, "If you have the chance to know who I am, you'll naturally know that your request is too excessive. Stop." Wan Ling hugged her chest and shouted, "A big man dares to take responsibility for his actions. If you have the ability, then tell me your name." The scholar turned around and smiled, "If I tell you my name, I'm afraid you won't be able to bear it. It's better if you don't know." At this moment, a golden light suddenly flashed in the sky. The scholar raised his head and looked. Then, without saying anything, he disappeared in front of Wan Ling. "Stop. Come back here. You haven't told me your name." "Shameless." Wan Ling anxiously shouted, but no one paid attention to her. She quickly took out a set of clothes from her storage bracelet and put them on. Then, she searched everywhere within a radius of a few hundred miles. However, from that day onwards, after 1,000 years, Wan Ling almost searched the entire immortal world, but she never saw the shadow of that scholar again. That scholar was like a mystery. It was as if what happened that day was like a dream. There was no trace of it. Only the cold touch of his lips was still fresh in her memory. It was also from that day onwards, that scholar's shadow became the thing that haunted her. In many dreams, she saw his appearance and woke up with joy. After waking up, there was only emptiness and disappointment. Wan Ling didn't know what was wrong with her. From then on, she didn't like other men. No matter how outstanding the men she met were, she couldn't help but compare them with that scholar. In the end, she found that there was no comparison at all. That scholar gave off a sense of transcendence that those vulgar men couldn't compare with. The difference was too great. In the end, Wan Ling sadly found that other than that scholar, she didn't like any other man. If she hadn't come into contact with such a man, then it would have been fine. However, she just had to meet him. Thus, a standard was set in her heart and she always used it to measure other men. If she wasn't Wan Bushing's granddaughter and was just the daughter of an ordinary family, she would have given up. However, she was Wan Bushing's granddaughter. She had enough bargaining chips. From then on, as time went by, Wan Ling gradually had a strange habit. She couldn't bear to see other men and women in love. If the love of the other party stimulated her too much, she would do something like snatching the love away. She had seduced other men more than once. After the other party broke up, she would kick the man she seduced, creating a lot of tragedies for others. This was why Wan Bushing said that he was worried that she had a problem. Just think, how could a normal woman always do this kind of thing? Wan Ling had been playing other men in the palm of her hand all these years. In addition, with Wan Bushing's support, it could be said that she had never suffered losses from other men. But unfortunately, she met Yu Qianqiu. This guy was not easy to deal with. He was originally a rogue, and there was nothing he didn't dare to do. He never acted according to common sense, and he always used unscrupulous means to achieve his goals. Finally, He ruthlessly tricked Wan Ling, which made Wan Ling gnash her teeth in hatred, but there was nothing she could do. Ling, why don't you continue? Seeing that she was in a daze for a long time, Wan Bushing finally couldn't help urging her. If he didn't solve the problem of his precious granddaughter's marriage, it would really make him anxious. Because some old guys had already asked him if his granddaughter had a problem. He almost couldn't get out of the situation several times. I don't believe that he will never appear. Wan Ling bit her lip and woke up from her daze. After thinking about it, she still didn't want to tell the embarrassing story of her meeting with the scholar. She looked at Wan Bushing and said, "Grandpa, let me find him myself. I believe that I will find him. If I find him, Grandpa, please help me." As she said that, she raised her wrists that were bound by the black light, showing a delicate and pitiful look. Chapter 872. The Four Links Chamber of Commerce, which had been in dire straits before, had now been refurbished and the number of people working for it had suddenly increased. Nan Tianlong was going in and out of the entrance, welcoming and sending off guests from all over. The Four Links Chamber of Commerce had swept away its decadent trend and business was abnormally prosperous. Everyone in the town knew. In fact, it wasn't just the people in the town. Everyone in the immortal world knew that the Four Links Chamber of Commerce's current situation was all thanks to one person. That was the Grand Commander of the Immortal Palace's external affairs, Wu Xiong. It was precisely because of the engagement between Wu Xiong and Mu Tianjiao that the Four Links Chamber of Commerce had undergone earth-shattering changes. As for the other large Bada Chamber of Commerce in the town, it had already been completely exterminated. Not a single person was left. The uprooting of the Eight Links Chamber of Commerce made the other small chambers of commerce in the town tremble with fear. When the Four Links Chamber of Commerce declined, there were many people who hit them when they were down, so they all moved out to avoid the brunt. At this point, only the Four Links Chamber of Commerce was left in the town. Even so, the town wasn't deserted, but rather flourished because of the Four Links Chamber of Commerce's rapid rise. The vicissitudes of life, the ups and downs, could be seen from this. Mu Bing came out of the main hall with a group of flattering people. After letting Nan Tianlong send off the guests, he turned to look at the backyard. His daughter, who had originally taken over the Chamber of Commerce's affairs, had agreed to the engagement with Wu Xiong's matchmaker. Then, she returned the Chamber of Commerce's affairs to him and rarely left the backyard. Mu Bing had always been apprehensive, vaguely feeling that his daughter didn't like this marriage at all. However, she still forced a smile and agreed to it. Even he couldn't stop it. At this time, Tao Zhong, who had become Mu Bing's trusted aide, walked over with large strides. He chuckled as he walked over and handed over a flyer. "President, the Immortal Palace is really efficient." The flyer that eldest Miss wanted to see came in just a few days. They said it was the original flyer that the World Chamber of Commerce distributed in hallucinatory Immortal City. Mu Bing took the flyer and glanced at its contents. He shook his head with a wry smile. This kid has been causing quite a stir in the immortal world recently. It can be said that he's in the limelight. He then waved his hand at Tao Zhong. "Go help Tianlong greet the guests. I will personally deliver this to you. If there are any unimportant guests looking for me, just tell them I'm not free today and ask them to come back tomorrow." Not so long ago, when had the Four Links Chamber of Commerce ever had the qualifications to treat their customers like this? But the present was no longer the same. Tao Zhong smiled and cupped his hands. "Understood. I'll go right now." Looking at Tao Zhong's departing figure, Mu Bing stood silently for a while. This person was originally Mu Tianjiao's right-hand man, but now he had become her right-hand man. Mu Bing couldn't help but sigh as he turned around and walked towards the backyard. In the backyard, the plants were verdant and the flowers were delicate, attracting many butterflies and bees. As soon as Mu Bing walked in, he heard the sound of soil being shoveled from the dense nursery. He followed the sound and saw Mu Tianjiao squatting in the nursery with a small shovel to cultivate the soil for a rose that still had dew on it. Mu Tianjiao asked without raising her head, "Father, why are you here? Isn't it very busy outside?" Mu Bing glanced around and found that the originally barren nursery was now filled with roses. He couldn't help but curiously ask, "How did you fall in love with roses?" Mu Tianjiao gently smiled as she busied herself. "I accidentally heard Tao Zhong mention it and suddenly felt that I liked it, so I planted it. He said that roses are cold and drought resistant. They don't have high requirements for soil and are very adaptable. The worse the environment, the brighter they bloom, and they can compete with other flowers for fragrance. But there are also drawbacks. They don't like sunlight as much as some flowers. If there's too much sunlight, the petals will easily dry up and lose their luster." Mu Bing trembled as he looked at his daughter's attire. Her originally valiant and formidable-looking attire had now been changed into a woman's attire. His voice trembled as he asked, "Tianjiao, are you talking about yourself?" The small shovel paused for a moment before continuing. Mu Tianjiao lightly smiled. "Father, you're thinking too much. Flowers are flowers, and I am me. How can we be confused? Now that the Four Links Chamber of Commerce's business is getting better, it must be very busy. Please forgive me for being unfilial. I want to be lazy before I get married. Please forgive me, Father." Are you blaming Father in your heart?" Mu Bing smiled miserably. "Yes. It's all because I'm useless. I have to rely on my daughter's life in exchange for the Chamber of Commerce's future. Tianjiao, if you don't want to marry Wu Xiong, then tell me honestly. Don't lie to me. I'd rather the Four Links Chamber of Commerce collapse than let you be unhappy for the rest of your life. I'm going to break off this marriage." The small shovel stabbed into the ground. Mu Tianjiao stood up and turned to Mu Bing with a smile. "Father, you're really thinking too much. If I didn't like it, why would I agree? Don't you know your daughter's temperament? No one can force your daughter to submit. Is it true?" Mu Bing stared at Mu Tianjiao. "Tell me if it's true. Don't lie to me." Mu Tianjiao didn't dare to look straight at him. She shifted her gaze and said, "Of course it's true." Suddenly, she saw the list in Mu Bing's hand and exclaimed softly, "What's that in Father's hand?" Mu Bing was startled, then smiled. "Haven't you always been paying attention to the World Chamber of Commerce's news? You said the rumors are unreliable." As he spoke, he handed the list to his daughter. "This is what Tao Zhong asked Wu Xiong to send to protect you. It said that the World Chamber of Commerce distributed the original flyer in Fantasy Immortal City. You used Wu Xiong's men?" Mu Tianjiao's outstretched hand trembled slightly. Then, she took the flyer and looked at it. On it was written, "Thanks to everyone's care, the World Chamber of Commerce will officially open on the 25th of this month. At that time, friends from all over are welcome to come and support us. World Chamber of Commerce's president cum sect master, Yu Qianqiu, thanks. It's fine to use Wu Xiong's men, right?" Mu Bing hesitated. A trace of helplessness flashed across Mu Tianjiao's face. She forced a smile and said, "Father, Wu Xiong's men are also from the Immortal Palace. When have you ever heard of a sect having the right to command the Immortal Palace's men? Wu Xiong sending people to protect us is his kind intentions, but we can't justify using the Immortal Palace's men. Since we've already done it this time, let's forget about it. However, I hope that Father won't do something like this again. Being able to borrow the power of the Immortal Palace is already enough for our Four Links Chamber of Commerce to develop. Don't go overboard or you'll bring disaster upon yourself. You must know that the master of the Immortal Palace is the Immortal Emperor, not Wu Xiong. I hope that Father will remember this." Hearing his daughter's words, Mu Bing also reacted. He knew that this matter wasn't appropriate. If he angered the Immortal Emperor, even 10 Wu Xiong's wouldn't be able to protect him. Thinking about the possible consequences of this matter, he felt a lingering fear. On the side, Mu Tianjiao tilted her head to look at the flyer in her hand and faintly sighed. "World Commerce's president and sect master Yu Qianqiu. I originally thought that our Four Links Chamber of Commerce was already developing fast enough. Who would have thought that this Yu Qianqiu has already established his own Chamber of Commerce in the psychedelic Immortal City? I wasn't wrong about him. He's a capable person. Truly amazing. Haha. Don't worry. It won't be long before we can also buy our own mountain in the psychedelic Immortal City and open our business. At that time, I'll add another 40 billion and register the Four Links Chamber of Commerce as a full-service Chamber of Commerce. We'll carry forward our Mu family's ancestral business. Mu Bing confidently patted his daughter's shoulder and said, that fellow Yu Qianqiu's actions are all for show. It's just a gimmick to scare people. What can he do alone? If our Four Links Chamber of Commerce continues to develop at this rate, our business will only grow bigger and bigger. It won't be long before we surpass his world commerce. However, there's something I feel a little strange about. Mu Tianjiao, who didn't know what to say to her father, raised her head slightly and said, "What do you feel is strange about?" Mu Bing frowned and muttered, "If this Yu Qianqiu can really take out 50 billion, why didn't he establish his Chamber of Commerce earlier? Why did he accept our Four Links Chamber of Commerce's employment and take the risk to enter the Divine Ruins realm? Do you think it's possible that he collected some rare immortal herb in the Divine Ruins realm and didn't give it to us? After he came out, he sold it for a large sum of money and then had the capital to establish the world commerce?" Mu Tianjiao looked at her father dumbfounded. Then, she lowered her head and forcefully folded the flyer in her hand. After calming herself down, she forced a smile and said, "Father, you have to know that even though 50 billion is a very large sum of money to us, let alone 50 billion, even 100 billion can't buy the Green-Winged Bat King and White Cloud Mountain Lord to follow us. These two early-stage Immortal Emperor experts can't be bought with money. So father, don't have that kind of suspicion towards Yu Qianqiu. Even if you do, don't mention it to outsiders." Hearing this, Mu Bing smiled awkwardly. "Hearing you say this, it seems that I've gauged the heart of a gentleman with my own mean measure. It's indeed not very likely. Daughter has interacted with him and carefully observed him. This person doesn't seem very proper, but he's an extremely capable person. When he's not paying attention, he's already using a series of methods. When he's not paying attention, he's already overturning the clouds and rain. Everything is within his control. This person will become a great person sooner or later. Unfortunately, I didn't succeed in roping him in. Otherwise, the future of our Four Links Chamber of Commerce would be even broader." Mu Tianjiao shook her head and sighed. "It's easy to raise 1,000 troops, but it's hard to find a good general. Our Four Links Chamber of Commerce's pool is too shallow. It's not enough for him to overturn the rivers and seas." Mu Bing frowned. "Tianjiao, I believe you if you say he's capable, but you're overestimating him too much. If he's really as powerful as you say, I'm afraid the first ones who won't tolerate him would be the big sects of the immortal world. Those big sects won't sit by and watch such a powerful person rise. This father of hers was sometimes clear-headed and sometimes muddle-headed, but most of the times he was muddle-headed was futile. No matter how much she explained, she could only pave the way." Mu Tianjiao bit her lips and said, "Father, after all, I've fought alongside Yu Qianqiu in the Divine Ruin realm. Now that his World Chamber of Commerce has opened, I want to personally send a congratulatory gift to congratulate him." Chapter 873. You're going to personally deliver the gift? Mu Bing's brows furrowed as he tried to persuade her. "You have an extraordinary status now. Many people want to meet you, but they're not qualified. No matter how powerful Yu Qianqiu is, he'll have to behave himself in front of the Immortal Palace. Your future man is the Immortal Palace's External Affairs Commander, Wu Xiong. What right does Yu Qianqiu have for you to personally congratulate him? In my opinion, it's enough for Tao Zhong to make a trip." "Father!" Mu Tianjiao shouted. Her eyes suddenly became fierce as she said word by word, "Yu Qianqiu relies on himself. We rely on Wu Xiong. Are you sure we can rely on him for a lifetime?" Mu Bing's expression stiffened. He was stunned for a moment before he said embarrassedly, "Don't tell me we still have to rely on Yu Qianqiu. It's not a question of who to rely on." Mu Tianjiao's words carried a hint of anger. "Isn't it good to have a friend with potential? Isn't it good to have more connections? Do you really want the Four Links Chamber of Commerce to walk a single log bridge while trembling in fear? The atmosphere between father and daughter instantly became a little awkward. Mu Bing didn't dare to look directly at Mu Tianjiao's eyes. He tilted his head and said weakly, "Then it's up to you." No matter how disappointing the other party was, he was still her father. Mu Tianjiao's eyes then softened. She smiled weakly and said, "If I get married, I'm afraid father will be lonely." "Father, you might as well marry a few more wives." Mu Bing looked at her, dumbfounded. There was actually a daughter who told her father to marry a few more wives. "Father, don't misunderstand. I don't mean anything else." Mu Tianjiao smiled and explained, "I believe that the Four Links Chamber of Commerce's family business will grow bigger and bigger. No matter how big the family business is, it needs someone to inherit it. Father, why don't you help me give birth to a few younger brothers and sisters?" She had completely lost hope in her father. The reason why she persuaded her father to remarry was because she hoped that one of her younger brothers and sisters would appear. She could also take advantage of her position as Wu Xiong's woman to support him. Over and over again, it was to protect and develop the family business. It could be said that she had put in a lot of effort. However, Mu Bing couldn't understand his daughter's painstaking efforts. He was too embarrassed to discuss this topic with his daughter, so he found an excuse to run away. Mu Tianjiao looked at her father's back as he left. She stood alone in the courtyard, desolation creeping up her face. Actually, she was not willing to marry Wu Xiong. She was also a proud and arrogant woman. Although the Immortal Palace was strong, she did not want to live under someone else's roof. She would rather rely on her own hands to revitalize the family business. What others gave her was not as comfortable as what she had earned with her own hands. Most importantly, he didn't have any feelings for Wu Xiong at all. But since Wu Xiong had already sent someone to propose marriage, what qualifications did her tiny Four Links Chamber of Commerce have to refuse? The consequences of refusing would be a disaster for the Four Links Chamber of Commerce. In the face of this sudden change, the strong pressure made Mu Tianjiao unable to resist at all. It would have been fine if she was alone, but she couldn't let go of her family at all. Her mother had sacrificed herself for this family. She had to protect this family no matter what. In the end, she could only compromise and sacrifice herself in order to agree to this marriage. Mu Tianjiao flattened the flyer that had been crumpled into a ball in her hand once again. She looked at the handwriting on it and bitterly smiled as she muttered, "Since Wu Xiong took a liking to me, that means I have some good points. But why is it that when I shamelessly confess to you, you don't feel anything for me at all? No matter how strong I am, I'm still a woman. Is it wrong to want to find a man I like to shelter me from the wind and rain? You said you only want to be a free wandering cultivator, but you single-handedly created the World Chamber of Commerce. You big liar, how can I endure this? The World Chamber of Commerce, the world. Aspire to the world. What a great ambition, but why can't it accommodate a weak woman like me?" The entire Immortal realm was divided into a total of 13 immortal provinces. 12 of these provinces were each presided over by 12 immortal monarchs. The immortal province where the illusionary immortal city was located was called the Immortal Bestowal Province. It was the largest of the 13 immortal provinces and was personally presided over by Immortal Emperor Jin Tai. The name of the province implied that Immortal Emperor Jin Tai had bestowed the immortals of the immortal realm. The Immortal Bestowal Province had an immortal paradise called the Paradise Immortal Realm. The Paradise Immortal Realm was vast and covered in mist. There were countless plants and monsters, immortal grasses and immortal beasts all over the vast mountains and lofty ridges. The misty mountain range was filled with numerous experts of the immortal realm. It was the place with the highest concentration of top experts in the entire immortal realm. If outsiders wanted to trespass this place, they would simply be courting death. The mountains of the Paradise Immortal Realm slowly arched up from all directions towards the center. In the misty immortal mist, there was a majestic scene. There were immortal birds circling in the sky, there was purple mist coming from the east, and there was an aurora that shrouded the place. Even in the middle of the night, this place was still a place that never slept. A domineering aura that shook the hearts of the people was vast and mighty. For some reason, the central peak of the paradise immortal realm was split into two near the top. One section was like a crouching tiger and a coiling dragon that still stood tall on the vast earth, while the other section, which was dozens of miles in circumference, suddenly floated in the air. In the cloudy sky, a magnificent golden palace was faintly discernible. This was the famous Immortal Palace, the residence of immortal Emperor Jin Tai. It was built on the floating mountain peak. Golden streams of light flashed in and out of the lingering clouds and mist. This magnificent palace silently deterred the entire immortal realm, making all living beings in the immortal realm submit to it. On the secondary peak next to the main peak, there was a newly built palace. Rather than calling it a palace, it was more appropriate to call it a small courtyard. Not a single piece of metal could be seen in the entire courtyard. It was all built with all kinds of jade and jadeite. It was as translucent as an exquisite palace or a crystal palace, extremely beautiful and enchanting. This palace was built under the order of immortal Emperor Jin Tai in one day. If it weren't for the repeated refusal of the owner of this place, this crystal palace would be even more magnificent and enchanting, and wouldn't look like a small courtyard. The owner of this palace. Perhaps it was more appropriate to describe him as a guest, because the owner of this place did not regard himself as the owner of this place. He only regarded himself as a temporary guest. However, what was surprising was that within the walls of such a luxurious crystal palace, there was actually a simple thatched hut. There was intermittent music coming from the thatched hut, and there was a man singing a scary song with a duck-like voice. It was not an ordinary kind of unpleasant song. On the jade steps of the palace gate not far from the thatched hut, stood a dazzling beauty. She was dressed in a snow-white palace dress that wrapped around her graceful figure. Her beauty could topple a city. Her skin was as smooth as cream, her eyes were bright, and her teeth were white. She was dignified and charming, and her temperament was noble and compelling. Her hair was tied up in a bun, and her eyebrows were slightly wrinkled. The beauty in the palace dress slowly walked into the jade pavilion next to the thatched hut. She shouted into the thatched hut, "Brother Crocodile." The music that sounded like an old ox pulling a broken cart stopped. A tall figure in a silver robe with silver hair down to his shoulders walked out of the thatched hut with a guqin in his arms. He walked happily to the pavilion and sat down, then placed the guqin on the jade table. The former immortal crocodile, now Shuajuan, smiled and said, "Sister Ji Wu, how was my guqin playing? How was my singing?" Ji Wu stared at him with a pair of bright eyes and was speechless for a long time. She said, "You know I don't like to lie. Your guqin and singing are really not good. It's really unpleasant to listen to. I, your little sister, feel suffocated listening to it, so I came to stop you. You are really direct." Shuajuan smiled and scratched his head. He said, "In fact, I also know that it's not good, but everything is difficult at the beginning. I will eventually practice. I don't believe that I can't beat that brat." Ji Wu looked around and set up a soundproof enchantment. She sat opposite Shuajuan and looked at the thatched hut. She frowned and said, "Why do you do this? This is clearly a silent protest. In Jintai's eyes, it will only make him hate you more, and he will not let you go." Shuajuan looked back at the thatched hut he built, and said indifferently, "I have worked for him for many years, but I didn't expect to end up like this. From the day he wanted to kill me, we are even. From now on, I will not take advantage of him. I can live in peace in my own grass nest." Ji Wu smiled bitterly and shook her head. This is the celestial realm, his world. No one can beat him. Everyone has no choice. Why are you so stubborn? Saving your own life is the most important thing. Humph. There are many things that are beyond your control. Why don't you marry him and become his celestial empress? Shuajuan said with a playful face. That position is below 1 and above 10,000. Many women in the celestial realm dream of it. Ji Wu frowned and said angrily, "I, Ji Wu, have not reached the point where I have to sell my body for glory." What a joke. What a joke. Sister, don't be angry. After Yi Shuejun waved her hand again and again, she raised her head and sighed. In fact, you and I are both under house arrest here. It's up to Jin Tai to kill us. It depends on how long his patience lasts. When he loses his patience and wants to use force, how will you deal with it? I don't really care. I've already died twice. The first time was because I was saved by that stinky brat, and the second time was because you saved me from Kintai's hands. I can't repay you for saving my life twice. Now, we can only take it one step at a time. Ji Woo shook her head and did not want to talk about such a heavy topic. Her eyes fell on the guqin on the table. She said strangely, Brother Yi is in a good mood. Why do you want to play the guqin and sing? Is it to vent? Vent my ass. I think of that brat. Since I got out of the human world, I have the most fun with that brat. Yi Shuejun touched the strings of the guqin and said, don't be fooled by that brat. In fact, his music is unparalleled. No one in the world can beat him. Don't judge a book by its cover. Ji Woo hesitated. Do you still suspect that the Yu Qianqiu who founded the World Chamber of Commerce in the Celestial Realm is the same Yu Qianqiu in the human world? Yi Shuejun rolled his eyes and said, what doubt? I am sure it is that guy. Besides him, I can't think of any other Yu Qianqiu who would mess around like this. Chapter 874. Maybe it's just the same name. Besides, establishing a chamber of commerce is not fooling around. It only shows that this person is ambitious. Ji Woo didn't agree and said, plus you also know that it's impossible for that world to come to the immortal realm with the power of a deified spirit. He shouldn't be Yu Qianqiu. Why not? Yi Shuejun counted with his fingers. First, the name Yu Qianqiu is too rare. The probability of them sharing the same name is too low. Secondly, the two of them just so happen to be at the deity transformation stage. Only that guy would dare to establish a chamber of commerce with a deity transformation stage cultivation. Third, don't be fooled by his soul formation cultivation. In fact, both of them are extraordinary. It is entirely possible for them to come to the immortal realm. Master and disciple? Have you met his master? Hearing him praise the master and disciple, Ji Woo couldn't help but ask, who is his master? Yi Shuejun was in a dilemma. Should he answer or not? His reaction made Ji Woo even more curious. A trace of craftiness flashed through her bright eyes as she said, is it not convenient to reveal it to a girl? If it's inconvenient, then don't say it. Yi Shuejun was embarrassed to hide it. After all, she saved his life. He hesitated and said, it's not that I don't want to tell you, but I'm afraid you will be angry. Angry? Ji Woo suddenly giggled and said, do you think we have the right to be angry when we are imprisoned in this place? Brother Yi doesn't understand me. I'm not a narrow-minded person. I don't need to be angry about everything. If there is anyone I can't forgive, it is Yi Zhao's disciple, slaying Luo. I didn't expect them to return to the immortal realm. Don't let me leave this place. Once I leave, I will not let any of them go. Ji Woo stared at Yi Shuejun sharply. Don't tell me that Yu Qianqiu's master is slaying Luo. If that's the case, then I'm sorry brother Yi Shuejun. I will not let Yu Qianqiu go either. As long as it's someone from the Rakshasa faction, I won't let a single one of them go. The resentment in her words was so deep that it was unforgettable. It could be seen that the sneak attack by the Rakshasa and the others when she was heavily injured had indeed hurt her heart. Shuejun waved his hand and said, sister, don't misunderstand. Yu Qianqiu's master is definitely not Rakshasa. Rakshasa is not even qualified to carry his master's shoes. Ji Woo was surprised. She asked suspiciously, Yu Qianqiu has such a powerful teacher? Could he be one of the 12 great immortal monarchs of the immortal world? That's not right. I have no enmity with the 12 immortal dukes, so there's no need for me to be angry over them. Actually, there's no harm in telling you. I just hope that you can keep it a secret. After all, Yu Qianqiu is my benefactor. I don't want to hurt him, said Heir Shuajuan with a bitter smile. Ji Wu nodded curiously as a form of assurance. Shuajuan knew that she was a person of her word. Without hesitation, he said slowly, in fact, you have met his master and fought with him. His master is the one who seriously injured you in the heaven and earth universe formation. Bai Changchun. Ji Wu exclaimed in shock, his master is the Bai Changchun who challenged the emperor of the underworld in the underworld world? Thinking of the green-robed elder, she still had lingering fear. The majestic fighting spirit contained in that thin figure made people respect and fear him. He was really a character. In the heaven and earth universe formation, the scene of 4 middle-stage immortal emperor experts fighting him together was still vivid in Ji Wu's mind. Yes, he is Yu Qianqiu's master. Heir Shuajuan sighed with a complicated expression. From the first time I saw him, I knew he was a belligerent, but he did have some extraordinary abilities. I didn't expect him to be so crazy that he had the courage to challenge a terrifying character like the Emperor of the Underworld. He was seriously injured by the Emperor of the Underworld, but he still managed to escape. The Emperor of the Underworld has lost face this time. This Bai Changchun has undoubtedly shaken the authority of the Emperor of the Underworld, letting the people in the Underworld know that the Emperor of the Underworld is not invincible. I'm afraid the old monsters in the Underworld will be restless. The Underworld will be in chaos. Ji Wu was speechless. She really didn't expect that the master of the guy she didn't even want to look at was actually Bai Changchun. Her master had seriously injured her, and his disciple had saved her life at a critical moment. What was this? But now she believed Heir Shuajuan's words. That Yu Qianqiu might really be the current Yu Qianqiu in the immortal world. Brother Heir, you don't have to look at me like that. Ji Wu shook her head and smiled bitterly. Come to think of it, that guy also saved my life. His master is his master and he is him. I'm not so narrow-minded as to blame his master's wrongs on him. Since he came to the immortal world and saved our lives, shouldn't we send a congratulatory gift to him now that his World Chamber of Commerce is about to open? You want to send him a congratulatory gift? Heir Shuajuan was a little speechless. He remembered that Yu Qianqiu touched Ji Wu's buttocks when she was unconscious. If Ji Wu knew about it, she would rather let Luo Sha and the others go than let Yu Qianqiu go. Ahem. Don't send a congratulatory gift. If the two of us send a congratulatory gift, I'm afraid it will immediately attract Jin Tai's attention. That will hurt him. Heir Shuajuan quickly stopped them. Ji Wu was molested in front of him, and he felt bad. If Ji Wu gave a gift to the person who molested her, Heir Shuajuan would not be able to bear it. So, he quickly found a reasonable reason to stop them. As for the matter of Ji Wu being touched by Yu Qianqiu, Heir Shuajuan decided to keep it to himself. He must not tell anyone. Otherwise, Ji Wu would fall out with him. Every time he thought of this, Heir Shuajuan gritted his teeth. That kid did something shameful, and I have to take the initiative to cover it up for him. Ji Wu nodded slowly when she heard the words, Brother Heir is thoughtful. That will indeed hurt him. Heir Shuajuan was speechless. He picked up the guqin on the table, and his radish-like fingers plucked the strings, making a sound like an old cow pulling a broken cart. He wailed like a ghost and howled like a wolf to cover up his inner embarrassment. I have a flower, planted in my heart, budding and waiting to bloom. Day and night, I eagerly await those who have the heart to come to my dream. The hoarse voice, coupled with the ghostly howl, immediately made Ji Wu's expression change. She immediately got up to leave. Although Shuajuan's singing was terrible, the lyrics were still very clear. Every word was enough to make people tremble. When Ji Wu heard the lyrics clearly, she became absent-minded in an instant. She actually patiently listened to it. As she listened, Ji Wu was a little absent-minded along with Heir Shuajuan's ghostly howl. She muttered. After love, you know the importance of love. After getting drunk, you know the strength of wine. Flowers bloom and fade in the end. Fate does not stay, like the spring breeze that comes and goes. Women are like flowers in a dream. After the song ended, Heir Shuajuan found that Ji Wu was actually listening to him seriously. He immediately said in surprise, Sister Ji Woo, what do you think? Did I make a lot of progress this time? Ji Woo came back to her senses when she heard the words. Her jade-like hand touched her forehead, and she said weakly, it's very unpleasant to listen to, but... Hearing the first two sentences, Shuajuan suddenly became depressed. However, when he heard the word, but, he suddenly became energetic again. His eyes lit up, and he asked, but what? I'm listening, and I'm willing to listen to your advice. Ji Woo smiled faintly, looking at him up and down with some admiration. She showed an incredulous expression and said, although the song is unpleasant, I really can't see it. I didn't expect Brother Air to be a person who is rough but delicate. You can actually write such beautiful lyrics. It's really profound. Those who don't understand the heart of women can't write it. I was deeply immersed in it just now. I really like it. I'm ashamed to say that I have underestimated Brother Air. Then you think too highly of me now. Shuajuan was dumbfounded on the spot. His mouth twitched 3 times, and he asked dryly, is there nothing good about the song I sang except the lyrics? This. Ji Woo looked at him, and she couldn't bear to say too much to provoke him, so she euphemistically said, everyone's appreciation ability is different, and my appreciation ability is indeed limited. Maybe many people will like Brother Crocodile's rough and forthright singing, but there is no doubt that I really like the lyrics written by Brother Crocodile. Hearing this evaluation, Shuajuan almost burst into tears. These words were too embarrassing. He thought he was right. His lips trembled, and he said, I wrote the lyrics. I didn't write the lyrics at all. It was Yu Qianqiu, that bastard, who had nothing better to do. I just borrowed it. As he said that, he raised his arms and shouted, oh my God. I have no face to see anyone. I'm ashamed. I won't do such a shameful thing anymore. Then, with a slap, the strings of the zither broke, and the zither was completely destroyed. Although Immortal Crocodile had always treated Ji Woo as a younger sister, she was still a beautiful woman. It was really shameful to be so shamelessly embarrassed in front of a beautiful woman. After smashing the zither, he covered his face with both hands and scolded himself. Ji Woo bent down to pick up a string, straightened it in her hand, and murmured, I have a flower, the fragrance of the flowers fills the branches, who will sincerely seek its traces. Immortal Crocodile put down his hands, and said in surprise, what did you say? Ji Woo was startled, and then said with a smile, I said I couldn't tell, but I didn't expect Yu Qianqiu to be such a talented guy. Sigh. Immortal Crocodile used both hands to push his messy silver hair to the back of his shoulders, shook his head, and smiled bitterly. Not just you, I have been with him for so long, and I can't tell. That time, after he was forced to show a little of his skills, I realized that this guy actually knows how to play with the instruments that women play with. But you don't say, even I, who don't understand music, think that the kid is really good at playing and singing. It's like the sound of heaven. At that time, I heard people say that he made a few songs, and each of them is a masterpiece of the world. Chapter 875. The song is the masterpiece of the human world? Ji Woo smiled faintly, Brother E really thinks highly of your little brother. Is it as exaggerated as you say? Shuajuan waved his hand disapprovingly, anyway, I have never heard such a beautiful song, but I can't help it if you don't believe me. Anyway, I can't say anything about this nonsense. He was too lazy to explain, but Ji Woo seemed to be very interested. She wanted to get to the bottom of it. She smiled and said, you and I have nothing to do. Why don't we have a chat? By the way, you said that Yu Qianqiu was forced to show his skills. What happened? Could it be that he could be forced to play the zither and compose the song? AI. It's not the kind of coercion you said. It's like this. Shuajuan still had a little conscience. He did not expose all of Yu Qianqiu's secrets. He only told the story of the day in Lingfeng Valley. A love triangle story about Yu Qianqiu, Lu Yanqing, and when Lanfeng was talked about by him in his free time, after listening to the story, Ji Woo understood the composition of the song. However, women seemed to be more interested in love stories. This was a common problem for women. She said suspiciously, "You mean that the woman named Lu Yanqing is the most beautiful woman in the world, and Lu Yanqing fell in love with Yu Qianqiu and expressed her love to him, but Yu Qianqiu politely refused?" Speaking of this, Yi Shuajuan suddenly slapped his thigh and laughed. He shook his head and said, "In fact, Lu Yanqing is really beautiful. She is not much inferior to you. In my opinion, she is just not as good as you in temperament." However, such a delicate beauty mustered up the courage to take the initiative to express her love, but she was rejected by that guy in such a straightforward way. Thinking about it, it's amazing. Ji Woo's eyes flickered and said, "Straightforward way? What way?" Yu Shuajuan smirked and said, "That kid said that I'm a rough guy, and I'm more interested in the topic of having sex with women. I don't like the topic of flirting. You should talk to someone who understands." That brat patted his buttocks and left after he finished speaking. He really made us men proud, He's more interested in the topic of going to bed with a woman. This brat is really a man among men, Halfway through his laughter, he suddenly couldn't laugh anymore. Only then did he realize that the person sitting opposite him was also a woman. He quickly cupped his hands in apology and said, "Sister, please don't blame me. I'm also a boorish man." Ji Woo's face was flushed, and she looked even more beautiful. She said mercilessly, "No man is good. I thought he was talented, but he's just a scum." Yi Shuaijun nodded and said, "Yes, yes, yes. How can that guy be called refined? It's best to describe him as scum. I've always disliked this guy. Scum, he's definitely scum. He's not a good person." However, even though Ji Woo scolded him, she asked, "Didn't you say that several of his songs in the human world are masterpieces? Even if you don't know how to sing them, you should remember the lyrics. Since we have nothing to do, why don't you read it to me? I really can't read this." Immortal Crocodile scratched his head in embarrassment and said, "I happened to be there just now. Because that kid's performance was so good, I couldn't help but remember it. The other masterpieces and so on are all from other people. I haven't heard them before, so I don't know if they're good or not." "I see." Ji Woo smiled casually, but there was a hint of disappointment in her bright eyes. Because the World Chamber of Commerce in Fantasy Immortal City was about to open, the preparation work became heavy. However, there were still some clues. Under Sikongju's suggestion, Yu Qianqiu sent Sikongju back and replaced him with his junior, Jing Yuankong. This was because when Yin Baikong was alive, Jing Yuankong was the main person in charge of the World Chamber of Commerce's business, while Sikongju was mostly in charge of external affairs. In terms of business management ability, Sikongju was indeed inferior to Jing Yuankong. After Jing Yuankong arrived, with Yu Qianqiu's full trust, he immediately adjusted the World Chamber of Commerce's operations in an orderly manner and started training the staff. As a result, the conference room on the 21st floor had a few meetings almost every day. Yu Qianqiu also learned like a good student, and the teacher was naturally Jing Yuankong. After a few business talks, everyone felt a little emotional. It was no wonder Yin Baikong could support such a huge World Chamber of Commerce in the human world. He was indeed good at doing business. However, Jing Yuankong told everyone that these were just some superficial things. Doing business was actually a very systematic knowledge. Experience was the foundation. Things that were too complicated were useless just by talking about it. Everyone had to integrate into it and put it into practice. Yu Qianqiu also didn't expect everyone here to become experts in making money for the World Chamber of Commerce. After all, the opening day was not far away. He mainly let Jing Yuankong teach everyone some business rules and instill the attitude that the customer is the immortal emperor. They shouldn't be used to being the overlord of a region and fight with the other party because they couldn't take it lying down. That would be a mess. Thus, Yu Qianqiu specially arranged for them to practice on the spot. One side would act as the bullied seller while the other side would act as the purposely difficult buyer. Wei Chuanxiu, who had always been following behind Yu Qianqiu, understood these people after a period of time and gradually felt that it was strange. He realized that although the people Yu Qianqiu recruited didn't seem to have much of a cultivation, they were all experts who could stand on their own. In terms of ability, they were definitely not the same cultivation disciples of the large sects or aristocratic families in the immortal world could compare to. If it wasn't for the fact that these people's cultivation were a little lacking, their ability to handle matters would definitely be comparable to some sect masters. They were all extremely slick and had very strong minds. They weren't like those itinerant cultivators who lived cautiously in the immortal world. No matter how you looked at them, they were all seasoned veterans. Especially after attending a few of Jing Yuankong's lessons, he felt that it was even more outrageous. This was simply a veteran who had experienced many battles in the business world. With such rich business experience, any sect would fight to have such a talent. Why was it a soul formation initial stage itinerant cultivator? Why would such talents flock to the World Chamber of Commerce? Wei Chuanxiu couldn't figure out the reason no matter how he racked his brains. He could only lament that there were indeed many outstanding people in the wilderness. No wonder the top experts in the immortal world were often itinerant cultivators and itinerant immortals. On the 25th of the month, the day that everyone anticipated, the grand opening of the World Chamber of Commerce had finally arrived. The reason why everyone was looking forward to it wasn't because they wanted to show their support, but because they wanted to watch the show. Everyone seemed to have a premonition that the grand opening of the World Chamber of Commerce would definitely be a show to watch. And today's World Chamber of Commerce was indeed very lively. Because Yu Qianqiu's beliefs from his previous life were deeply ingrained, he really liked the festive feeling of a grand opening. He felt that red should be used today, a good beginning. Thus, long red banners hung down from the top of the World Chamber of Commerce's building. On the banners were some auspicious words to welcome guests from all over the world. As for sects that he was familiar with like Wangu Tong and Mythical Fire Palace, Yu Qianqiu went to visit them a day in advance. He shamelessly begged them to send a long red banner to congratulate him. Wang Gei and the others were rendered speechless by him. They had never seen such a thing before. However, they weren't forcing people to do something, so they all reluctantly sent a banner according to his request. Yu Qianqiu naturally accepted it with a chuckle. He then ordered people to hang the red banners of these large sects in the most conspicuous places of the building to show off their connections. Everyone in the World Chamber of Commerce was forced by him to wear a big red flower on their chests. He himself took the lead and put on a bright red robe. He stood at the door like a bridegroom, cupped his fists and smiled as he welcomed the guests. On the two sides of the door stood 8 people with big red flowers on their chests. They smiled awkwardly as they welcomed the guests. Even Wei Chuanxiu wasn't exempt. However, Wei Chuanxiu felt that the big red flower on his chest wasn't pleasing to the eye. He might as well put it on his back. The group of people couldn't understand. Was there any meaning in doing such a vulgar thing? Of course, there were also people who didn't wear big red flowers. They stood alone on the roof and silently watched Yun Peng below. He wasn't a member of the World Chamber of Commerce, so Yu Qianqiu couldn't force him. But then again, it did give people a very festive feeling. One look and you could tell that the World Chamber of Commerce was holding a joyous event. Not only that, the Wangu Tong sect, Lifire Palace, Spirit Cultivation sect and Skyward Palace's red banners also caused the spectators to feel a sense of awe and respect. These 4 great sects were willing to hang out their banners to show their support, regardless of whether Yu Qianqiu had a deep relationship with them or not. In the eyes of the spectators, even if their relationship wasn't that deep, it didn't matter. But what most people didn't know was that these 4 banners were obtained by Yu Qianqiu shamelessly. Please. 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 Please come in. Yu Qianqiu's face was a little dark as he squeezed out a smile and invited a guy he didn't know into the building. Even though he had decorated the opening ceremony to be very festive, there didn't seem to be many people coming in to support him. The number of people that went in wasn't even as many as the people he had set out to receive. But what made people's hair stand on end was that the people watching the show were densely packed in the air. Yu Qianqiu, who had been suppressing a bellyful of anger, really wanted to use his violet flame flying sword to send out 10,000 swords at the same time, knocking down all the spectators and dragging them in. However, thinking was just thinking about it. So he could only comfort himself that this was just the beginning, the main character should still be behind. Whispers and laughter filled the air. Wei Chuanxiu walked out of the door with a big red flower on his back. He stared coldly at the people in the air who were laughing at him. The deterrence of an expert was still there. Under Wei Chuanxiu's threatening gaze, all of them shut up. After waiting for a while, Yu Qianqiu, who was wearing a festive red robe, also slowly walked out. He coldly looked around, he also felt that something was wrong. The few guests that went in couldn't even compare to him in cultivation and probably couldn't afford to buy anything. Wang Gei and the other 3 families should have come to support him, but none of them came. This matter was very strange. Chapter 876. He looked back at the banners hung by the 4 sects on the tall building. Since they were willing to give this, why didn't they come to support them? Yu Qianqiu's eyes flickered as he looked at the people in the air. He could see a hint of mockery on their faces. Someone is playing tricks. This was Yu Qianqiu's first reaction. With this speculation, Yu Qianqiu's mind calmed down. He slowly walked into the building with his hands behind his back. In the center of the building's main hall was a pool made of jade. Yu Qianqiu sat at the edge of the pool while humming a little tune. He crossed his legs and looked at the small fish in the pool. From time to time, he would glance at the cultivators who were admiring the various immortal herbs. These people's cultivation levels weren't high. There was only one late-stage soul formation cultivator. They were all admiring the immortal herbs in the crystal cabinets in the hall with amazement. A few cultivators with big red flowers on their chests were eagerly introducing the immortal herbs to the people in the hall. The degree of emptiness at the opening was beyond everyone's expectations. However, there were a lot of people watching from the outside. The cold on the inside and the warm on the outside made everyone feel that something was wrong. Although the cultivators with big red flowers on their chests stood in their respective positions, they couldn't help but glance at Yu Qianqiu. They saw Yu Qianqiu leisurely sitting by the pool and humming a little tune. It was clear that he had a card up his sleeve. Everyone gradually calmed down. Lu Yanqing, who was guarding behind a large crystal cabinet, looked around and then looked at Yu Qianqiu. There was a faint trace of worry in her eyes. Even she could see that it wasn't easy to survive in the immortal realm. The deity transformation initial stage cultivator who had led them and had already browsed through all the immortal herbs on the 5th floor. Just as Yu Qianqiu had expected, the cultivator had only come in to look and had no intention of buying them. It seemed like he couldn't afford them and was walking out of the building, preparing to leave. When he passed by the pool, Yu Qianqiu, who was sitting with his legs crossed, suddenly shouted in an unfriendly tone, "Stop right there." Everyone in the hall stared at him. That person paused and cupped his hands at Yu Qianqiu. "Sect Master Yu, are you talking to me?" Yu Qianqiu stood up indifferently and walked in front of him. He said coldly, "Why did you steal my world commerce's immortal herbs?" When he said this, the lords in the hall quickly checked the crystal cabinets they were guarding. They found that none of the immortal herbs were missing. They looked at each other in confusion. That person's expression stiffened. When he saw everyone looking at him as if they were looking at a thief, he faintly felt that something was wrong. He immediately cupped his fists and explained, "Sect Master Yu, I'm afraid you've misunderstood. I didn't take anything from your merchant association. If Sect Master Yu doesn't believe me, you can check. I definitely don't have any immortal herbs on me. You still dare to quibble? I said you stole it, so you stole it. Do you think I'm wrong?" Yu Qianqiu shouted coldly and extended a palm from his sleeve. The person in front of him immediately exploded into a cloud of white mist. The white mist was instantly sucked into Yu Qianqiu's sleeve. In the blink of an eye, that person turned into a sinister-looking mummy and was on the verge of collapsing. Yu Qianqiu waved his sleeve expressionlessly and a green flame swept the mummy up to the top of the pool. When the green flame returned to Yu Qianqiu's sleeve, the giant mummy had already turned into drifting ashes and fell into the pool, attracting the fish in the water to kiss the surface of the water. Everyone in the hall looked at each other. They finally saw the terror of the torture envoy again. However, they didn't know why Yu Qianqiu would suddenly kill him. Lu Yanqing bit her lip and stared at Yu Qianqiu. There was a hint of anger in her eyes. Yu Qianqiu coldly looked around and suddenly shouted, "Guard all the entrances and exits. Don't let a single one escape. If anyone dares to escape, kill them without mercy." He indifferently stared at the other cultivators who came in to watch. The various lords immediately guessed that Yu Qianqiu must have a reason for doing this. They quickly scattered and guarded the entrances and exits, staring at those people like tigers watching their prey. Those cultivators panicked and subconsciously gathered together, putting their backs against each other in a defensive position. Someone shouted, "Sect Master Yu, what is the meaning of this? What is the meaning of this?" Yu Qianqiu laughed coldly as he walked towards them and said indifferently, "I just heard from outside that you were ordered by someone to deliberately cause trouble. As a result, those people outside were so scared that they didn't dare to come in." The various lords looked at each other again. This reason seemed too far-fetched. Based on these 5 people's cultivation, what trouble could they cause? With their cultivation, they couldn't possibly scare the people outside. The person who shouted cupped his fists and said, "Sect Master Yu, someone is deliberately misleading us. How could the few of us come to World Commerce City to cause trouble? There is another reason why the people outside didn't come in. It has nothing to do with us. Please, Sect Master Yu, be magnanimous and let us leave." "So you're saying that someone is wrongly accusing you?" Yu Qianqiu raised his brows and said indifferently, "I'm not an unreasonable person and I won't easily believe a one-sided story. I'll give you a chance to explain yourself. Then tell me, why didn't the people outside come in? Also, I'm warning you, don't try to fool me. Once I find out, I guarantee that none of you will leave alive." With that said, the various lords instantly understood. After going through so much trouble, this was their main goal, which was to find out the reason for this strange matter. They were all filled with admiration. The expressions of the people trapped also changed. They weren't idiots and naturally knew Yu Qianqiu's goal. Originally, some people were still holding on to a trace of hope. They thought that this was hallucinatory Immortal City and Yu Qianqiu wouldn't dare to do anything to them. Otherwise, they would be severely punished by the Chamber of Commerce Alliance. However, Yu Qianqiu had just come to kill the chicken to warn the monkey. He had made up a random excuse and killed the innocent person. They were extremely daring and simply disregarded the rules of the Chamber of Commerce Alliance. At this moment, everyone understood that the person from before didn't steal anything at all. Yu Qianqiu had killed him for everyone to see. After a moment of silence in the hall, Yu Qianqiu said indifferently, "My patience is limited. I believe everyone has heard that the 30 disciples of the Heartless Palace all died in my hands in the ruins of God. Ask yourselves, how do you compare to them? I advise you to say it as soon as possible. Once I lose my patience, even if you want to say it, I might not want to hear it." Ruthless in the front and warning behind, forcing the few of them to have no way out. The cultivator who spoke to Yu Qianqiu gritted his teeth and said, "Sect leader Yu, this matter really has nothing to do with us. Before I came, I heard that in the morning, before the World Commerce Alliance opened, the Heartless Palace's elder Feng Jiu suddenly sent a message to the various sects managers, saying that if anyone dared to support the World Commerce Alliance, they would not give the Heartless Palace any face and would be going against the Heartless Palace. That's all I know." Sure enough, someone was playing tricks behind the scenes. The lords of the various countries all had stern looks in their eyes. Yu Qianqiu looked at the others expressionlessly and asked, "Is what he said true?" "That's what I've heard." "I've heard the same thing," a few people said one after another. "Yunnan Tian!" Yu Qianqiu suddenly shouted. Yunnan Tian, who was dressed in a white cloak, responded and flashed over. Yu Qianqiu squinted his eyes and said, "Even the loose cultivators here know about such a big thing, but we didn't hear anything. If this continues, we will be eaten by others sooner or later. From today onwards, I'll leave the matter of gathering information to you. If you have nothing to do, go out and take a stroll. In the future, when the conditions are right, you have to organize a group of people specifically in charge of this matter. Our world commerce cannot be blind or deaf. Got it. Enchanting clasped his hands angrily and said, "What should we do now? I'm just afraid that I don't know what happened. It'll be easier now that I know. Damn it. They're going too far. Do they think I'm made of clay? Just wait and see, you dog." Yu Qianqiu walked outside with large strides. "Sect Master Yu, can you let us go now?" The person who had spoken to Yu Qianqiu earlier asked. In the end, Yu Qianqiu shouted without even turning his head, "Don't leave a single one alive, kill." With this order, the trapped people immediately cried out in alarm. Someone shouted angrily, "Yu Qianqiu, you despicable person, I'll fight you to the death." However, the lords of the various countries who were already boiling with murderous intent had already attacked first. Dozens of figures surrounded and attacked ruthlessly. In an instant, the hall was filled with the sounds of a fierce fight. With such a sudden commotion inside, the onlookers outside immediately knew that a fight had broken out. Before Yu Qianqiu could walk out of the door, Wei Chuanqiu, who was carrying a big red flower on his back, had already flashed in. Seeing the fight that had quickly ended inside, he said in shock, "What's going on?" Yu Qianqiu ignored him and walked to the area outside the door. He looked around coldly at the onlookers and shouted sternly, "Throw out the corpses for me." As soon as he finished speaking, a few mutilated and dismembered corpses were thrown out from inside. The onlookers floating in the air were instantly shocked. They didn't know what was going on with the World Commerce Association. Previously, when they were recruiting people, there had already been cases of people dying in a fight. Now, something like this happened again. Weren't they afraid that the Commerce Association Alliance would punish them severely? Wei Chuanqiu. Yu Qianqiu shouted again. With a flash of green light, Wei Chuanqiu had already landed beside him. Before the doubt on his face had disappeared, he saw Yu Qianqiu shout angrily at the crowd, "Heartless Palace's elder Feng Jiu actually dared to openly send people to provoke our World Commerce Association in broad daylight. Smashing and robbing, committing all sorts of crimes. This is simply intolerable. This cannot be tolerated. Our World Commerce Association was forced to protect ourselves and had no choice but to kill. Bat King Wei, quickly go and invite the Commerce Association Alliance to uphold justice." Ah! How could this be? They're too daring. This heartless palace is too arrogant. The sounds of discussion in the air immediately became chaotic. Most of the people knew that Feng Jiu had ordered the sects to blackmail them, so they were waiting here to watch the show. They wanted to see the World Commerce Association embarrass themselves. However, they didn't expect Feng Jiu to be so daring. She actually sent people to smash and rob. This was a bit too much. Chapter 877. In everyone's eyes, World Chamber of Commerce was the weaker party compared to Heartless Palace. It was good enough that Heartless Palace didn't cause trouble for World Chamber of Commerce. At least for now, no one believed that Yu Qianqiu would confuse right and wrong to cause trouble for Heartless Palace. Therefore, after hearing Yu Qianqiu's indignant shout, everyone felt that Feng Jiu had crossed the line. They all thought that Heartless Palace was too arrogant to cause trouble in hallucinatory Immortal City. This was a slap to the Chamber of Commerce Alliance's face. For a moment, both in the open and in the dark, the comments condemning the Heartless Palace immediately caused an uproar, but no one suspected that Yu Qianqiu was talking nonsense. Feng Jiu, that little bastard? Wei Chuanqiu glared at him and said angrily, "This is too much. I'll go kill him now." The old bat was also irritated by her words. With him here, Feng Jiu, a junior, dared to come and make trouble. How could he be so shameless? Stop. Yu Qianqiu grabbed Wei Chuanqiu, who didn't know the details, and said loudly, "They are the biggest sect in the Immortal realm. They have the right to disregard the Chamber of Commerce Alliance's rules. But we don't have the right to be rude and unreasonable like them. Quickly go to the Chamber of Commerce Alliance and ask someone to uphold justice. He secretly scolded, "Old bat, don't ruin my plan. Do as I say." Wei Chuanxiu was startled. Then, he waved his sleeve and turned into a stream of light heading to the Chamber of Commerce Alliance. Yu Qianqiu's words caused the discussions in the surroundings to reach a climax. The Chamber of Commerce Alliance represented the Immortal Palace. Disregarding the rules of the Chamber of Commerce Alliance was a huge accusation. If these words were to spread, it would be a headache for the Heartless Palace. Some people in the crowd had changed their expressions and retreated quietly. The people of World Chamber of Commerce also stood at the gate angrily to express their silent protest. Yunnan Tian, who was beside Hu Changshou, slightly tilted his head and transmitted his voice. "Only the torture envoy dares to do such a big thing. If it were us, we would have to think twice." "That's right." Hu Changshou sent a telepathic message to Meng Qi. "The torturer is going to wrestle with the Heartless Palace. To be honest, I'm a little worried. After all, they're the #1 sect in the immortal world. What are you afraid of? At worst, we can just return to the human world. If we can't do it in the open, we can still have a chance to develop in the dark." Yunnan Tian replied disapprovingly, "As for those individual cultivators just now, although you don't belong to any sect and neither side is involved, why did you come here for no reason? Alas. It's their bad luck to run into a torturer who doesn't play by the rules. I feel sorry for them." In the inner room of the Passionless Palace's branch, Feng Jiru sat on the high seat, while the 4 leaders of the 4 islands of the lake, Lan Hao, Su Yuchang, Bao Tuxing, and Ning Zixuan sat on either side of her. The 4 of them were originally from the same sect, and the 4 islands of Lake Light were originally one family. Later on, because their master died at the hands of an enemy, a dispute arose between the 4 of them, and they all wanted to be the sect leader. As a result, a good sect was split into 4, and became 4 families. The 4 islands of Lake Light were within the main sphere of influence of the Passionless Palace, and they had always followed the Passionless Palace's lead. However, that didn't mean that they would throw away their lives. When they heard the summons, they hurried over. At first, they didn't know what it was for. When they arrived, Feng Jiru asked them perfunctorily, "Who is willing to snatch the territory of the world commerce?" When the 4 of them heard this, their expressions changed drastically. They weren't fools. The matter of Yu Qianqiu killing the disciples of the Passionless Palace in the ruins of God was already known to the world. It could be considered as a feud with the Passionless Palace. Coupled with the news that the world commerce was about to open, they immediately understood that the 4 of them were going to become tools for others to use. If it was to deal with an ordinary person, the 4 of them might fight to do it. With the support of the Passionless Palace, in addition to the fact that Yu Qianqiu's cultivation wasn't that great, they could also obtain a piece of land that was famous in the immortal world. It could be said to be a wonderful job. However, this Yu Qianqiu wasn't ordinary. He had the Green Wing Bat King and the White Cloud Mountain Master by his side. If they really snatched Yu Qianqiu's territory, then they might as well hide in the illusory immortal city for the rest of their lives. Otherwise, how would the 2 early-stage immortal emperor experts let them off? No matter how good the territory was, it wasn't as important as their own lives. No matter how Feng Jiru talked, the 4 of them were still vaguely unwilling to nod in agreement. Seeing that the soft approach didn't work, Feng Jiru didn't hold back anymore. She directly used a hard threat and said bluntly, "Everyone. We have no choice in this matter. If those 2 old monsters want to kill you, my Passionless Palace is still confident that we can protect you. However, if my Passionless Palace wants to kill you, those 2 old monsters definitely won't be able to protect you. Everyone better think clearly. Don't do things that you shouldn't have done." Since she had already said it to this point, the 4 of them really had no choice but to reluctantly agree. However, they had a stomach full of complaints. "Since your Passionless Palace isn't afraid of those 2 old monsters, why did you still ask us to torment you? Can't your Passionless Palace handle it yourself?" What they didn't know was that this matter was completely done by Feng Jiru herself. It wasn't a decision made by the upper echelons of Passionless Palace. With Feng Jioru's late-stage great immortal cultivation, let alone 2 old monsters, any old monster would be able to kill him. Otherwise, he wouldn't have so many scruples. Now, Feng Jioru wanted to do a better job and show off her abilities so that the higher-ups would think highly of her. In addition, she saw that the 4 of them were not very determined, so she wanted to show off the might of the Heartless Palace. Thus, before the World Commerce Association opened, she sent a message to the sects, advising them not to support the World Commerce Association. Otherwise, they would be going against Passionless Palace. At this time, the news that came back from time to time showed that the sects were indeed afraid of Passionless Palace's power. No one dared to support the World Commerce Association. Feng Jioru proudly boasted to the sect masters. Her disciple Sun Luan also flattered her from time to time. The 4 sect masters were secretly shocked. They didn't expect Passionless Palace to be so powerful. It was far beyond their expectations. A simple warning was enough to make the sects in the immortal world not dare to act recklessly. Thus, the 4 of them slowly smiled and flattered her. At this moment, the disciple who had happily delivered the news suddenly stood outside and shouted for Branch Master. Sun Luan was slightly surprised when he saw this. He cupped his fists at the few people and came out to send a voice transmission to that disciple. Did something happen? That disciple hurriedly told him about what happened to the World Commerce Association. Sun Luan was a little confused after hearing it. He immediately felt that his master was overconfident and caused trouble. Originally, he didn't think that there was a need to waste effort on a Yu Qianqiu. If there was a decree from the upper echelons, then it was a different matter. There was no need to find trouble for himself. Go back and keep an eye on them. Sun Luan waved the disciple away. He felt that the situation was serious and he couldn't hide it anymore. He immediately returned to Feng Jioru's side and told her what happened. The smile on Feng Jioru's face slowly froze. The 4 island sect masters looked at each other, not knowing what happened to make this confident elder lose her composure. Feng Jioru, who was stunned for a moment, suddenly smashed the newly changed tea table into pieces. She stood up and shouted angrily, "How dare you slander this old man? Come, follow me to see." In the inner room of the Wangu Tong branch, Wan Gei, Huofeng, Du Nanshan, and Yadong Lu were all seated. Not only them, there were a few more people. Master Ye and Shui Mingqing, Hu Yanqing and Hui Yunlong, Du Kairen and Du Feng, and Wan Ling were also in the room. The last 3 pairs of master and disciple, or father and son, had taken the initiative to come to the sect to congratulate the opening of World Commerce Firm. It could be said that they were prepared to give Yu Qianqiu a great deal of face. Hu Lianqing and the others hadn't expected Yu Qianqiu's momentum to develop so fiercely. He had actually managed to establish a world commerce firm on his own and had even made quite a name for himself. They were acutely aware that this was a good opportunity because Yu Qianqiu had a good relationship with their sons or disciples. If they could use this opportunity to raise the status of world commerce firm, as long as Yu Qianqiu wasn't stupid, he would appreciate this favor and naturally deepen his relationship with their sons or disciples. This was undoubtedly beneficial to Yu Qianqiu, but it was also very beneficial to the juniors like Hui Yunlong. For these juniors, the competition within the sect was fierce. If they were on the same starting line as their peers in the sect, they would already have a close relationship with the sect leaders of other sections. This was definitely something that would give them extra points in the sect. If world commerce firm status in the immortal world was higher, Hui Yunlong and the others, who had a good relationship with sect master Yu Qianqiu, would naturally stand out among their peers in the sect. This problem seemed complicated, but it was actually very simple. For example, the position of deacon in Chaotian Palace would be given to anyone with similar conditions. There was a time when they needed to purchase some urgently needed immortal herbs and World Commerce Firm happened to be selling them. However, World Commerce Firm purposely raised the price or didn't want to sell them. Because Shui Mingqing had a good relationship with World Commerce Firm's sect master Yu Qianqiu, Chaotian Palace sent Shui Mingqing to talk to Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu finally sold the immortal herbs to Chaotian Palace for the sake of their friendship. Chaotian Palace benefited from this, so they naturally had to look up to Shui Mingqing. Like Master Ye and the others, they wouldn't give up an opportunity to help their son and disciple pave the way, so this group of people came. Wan Ling was different from everyone else. She was forced to come by her grandfather. A group of people were originally going to World Commerce Firm to congratulate them, but who knew that Feng Jiu-Ru would suddenly issue a warning? As a result, a group of people postponed the congratulation. As a result, they gathered together and waited for a while. It wasn't that they were afraid of Feng Jiu-Ru, but they wanted to see how Yu Qianqiu would deal with this. If Yu Qianqiu couldn't even get past this, they wouldn't go to congratulate him. Although they weren't afraid of Heartless Palace, there was no need to offend Heartless Palace for a useless person. Feng Jiu-Ru was actually certain of this. She predicted that everyone wouldn't offend Heartless Palace for a mere Yu Qianqiu, so she dared to be so arrogant. Chapter 878. In reality, Wang Gei didn't want to care about Feng Jiu-Ru's bullsh** T warning. As the largest chamber of commerce in the Immortal realm, it wasn't far from the Heartless Palace. Most importantly, Wan Bushing had told him that he couldn't treat Yu Qianqiu lightly. However, unexpectedly, Wan Ling stopped him from congratulating and told him to wait and follow the crowd. They would do what everyone else did. Wang Gei thought it was strange, but he knew that Wan Ling was sent by Wan Bushing. She was the one who could make the decision. As for the reason, only Wan Ling knew. She didn't like the Heartless Palace for a long time, but she didn't expect the Heartless Palace to make a move on the secret agent sent by the Immortal Emperor. She was delighted and looked forward to the scene of the Immortal Palace taking care of the Heartless Palace. The elders sat across from each other and chatted casually. The younger ones were polite and answered questions. Du Feng, Hui Yunlong, and Shui Mingqing were much more casual with each other because the three of them were friends. However, the three of them were much more polite to Wan Ling. They all remembered how Wan Ling had held Yu Qianqiu's hand in front of everyone. They didn't know what the relationship between her and Yu Qianqiu was. Although these people stayed here, they never stopped receiving news from the outside. They were always aware of the World Chamber of Commerce's movements. If there was anyone who was really worried about Yu Qianqiu, it was probably Shui Mingqing because he vaguely knew that there was an unknown power behind Yu Qianqiu that would be of great help to his future development. Once he left Yu Qianqiu's help, it wouldn't be long before the fake halo above his head was exposed. At that time, he would lose his foothold in Skyward Palace. Therefore, after Shui Mingqing knew that Feng Jiu-Ru was going to deal with Yu Qianqiu, he was very anxious. He was a little distracted when he talked to everyone. Just as everyone was patiently waiting, the latest news about the World Chamber of Commerce arrived. All the disciples told them about Yu Qianqiu's furious actions in detail. After they heard the latest news, all of them looked at each other with dumbstruck expressions, and Wang Gei said with astonishment, "This Yu Qianqiu is quite audacious to kill people in Illusory City again. But this Feng Jiu-Ru is even more daring. She actually dares to openly smash and rob in the World Commerce Association. She really doesn't place the rules of the Commerce Association Alliance in her eyes." Sitting cross-legged opposite him, Ye Donglu slowly shook his head and muttered, "Why do I feel that something is wrong? Feng Jiu-Ru might be arrogant, but she was not arrogant enough to go against the Immortal Palace, was she? Openly smashing and robbing in the World Commerce Chamber of Commerce, unbelievable. What's so unbelievable about that? That guy is too arrogant. Otherwise, why would he do something like warning the sects? Does he really think that his Heartless Palace has the final say in the immortal world?" Huafeng chuckled and said, "Normally, small sects would be afraid of Heartless Palace's power and wouldn't dare to make a sound. But this Yu Qianqiu is quite interesting. He's a person who can't tolerate sand in his eyes." Feng Jiu-Ru sent people to provoke him, but he was even more ruthless. He didn't place Heartless Palace in his eyes at all. He directly killed the people Feng Jiu-Ru sent, and still wants to complain to the Commerce Association Alliance. This time, Feng Jiu-Ru is playing with thorns. This Yu Qianqiu is not to be trifled with. I'm afraid he'll ruthlessly bite him, enough to make him suffer. Hearing this, everyone burst into laughter. At this time, Du Kairen stood up and said to Du Feng, "We should go congratulate that friend of yours for opening his business." Yafuzi also stood up and said, "That's right. Yu Qianqiu is alone and weak. He needs someone to support him, lest someone bullies him." They laughed again and left one after another for the World Commerce Association. However, Wang Gei, Hua Feng, Yadong Lu, and Du Nanshan didn't go. Since their respective sects had sent representatives, there was no need for them to join in the fun. Instead, they returned to their own territories. Yu Qianqiu stood alone in front of the World Commerce Association's building with his hands behind his back. He stood there motionlessly, his slightly closed eyes flashing from time to time. His big red robe was exceptionally eye-catching. "Get out of the way." An angry shout came. The crowd of onlookers in the air suddenly quietened down and made way for him. Yu Qianqiu narrowed his eyes and saw 6 people standing in the crowd that had parted. 2 blue-clothed men were at the front, and the elder in the lead pointed at him and shouted angrily, "You're Yu Qianqiu?" Yu Qianqiu's brows moved slightly, vaguely guessing who it was. He immediately sneered and said, "You're that old man Feng Jiuru who deliberately made life difficult for my World Commerce Association? How dare you?" Sun Luan shouted. Feng Jiuru was so angry that she laughed and said, "What an arrogant brat." The master and disciple landed in front of Yu Qianqiu. Feng Jiuru pointed at the mutilated corpse on the ground and said aggressively, "Why are you framing this old man?" Yu Qianqiu sneered and said, "I'm framing you? Damn it. I didn't even know who you were before this. I was even eager to avoid your heartless palace. It's more like I have nothing better to do. Only a ghost would frame you." The surrounding people nodded inwardly, deeply agreeing with Yu Qianqiu's words. Unless Yu Qianqiu was tired of living, he wouldn't deliberately frame Feng Jiuru. The news that Feng Jiuru had released against Yu Qianqiu was true. The lords crowded at the entrance of the World Commerce Association building were sweating in their palms. What if they angered the other party by spouting nonsense so unscrupulously? Feng Jiuru suddenly realized that she was too agitated and had lost her poise. She immediately took a deep breath and calmed herself down. She took a step forward and said arrogantly, "Brat, it's impossible to get away with making irresponsible remarks. This old man isn't that easy to frame. If you can't produce evidence, then shut up. Otherwise, you'll have to bear the consequences." "Old man. How dare you threaten me in front of so many people? Do you think the World Commerce Association is run by your heartless palace?" Yu Qianqiu retorted, almost spitting at the other party's face. Seeing that the other party was about to flip out again, he immediately waved his hand and shouted, "Before the World Commerce Association sends someone over, I have the right to remain silent. The World Commerce Association will decide what's right and wrong. I won't keep you company." He flicked his sleeve and turned to leave. "Stop right there," Feng Jiuru shouted. No soul formation cultivator had ever dared to speak to her like this. She had just calmed herself down, but she instantly exploded again. In the end, Yu Qianqiu shouted even louder than her. He turned around and pointed at Feng Jiuru's nose and roared, "This is my territory. If you don't want to stay, then scram. Anyway, shut up. I'm warning you, old man. If you dare to threaten me again, I will treat your threat as a serious provocation under the watchful eyes of everyone. I have the right to launch a counterattack, and when that happens, the responsibility will not be on me." There was an uproar in the air. Everyone felt that Yu Qianqiu had gone too far. Feng Jiuru also laughed and said disdainfully, "Then I'd like to see how you're going to fight back." Yu Qianqiu snorted coldly and turned to the top of the building. He cupped his hands and shouted, "Mountain Master Bai Yun, thank you." As soon as he finished speaking, a white light landed beside him. A pair of sharp eyes stared at Feng Jiuru. As soon as Yun Peng appeared, the entire place fell silent. Feng Jiuru's pupils contracted as if someone had grabbed her by the neck. She couldn't say a word. Only then did everyone remember. How could they have forgotten about this person? This guy was famous for being a cold-faced killer many years ago. He was much colder than the green-winged Bat King. How about I kill you? Yun Peng asked simply. His sharp eyes shone with a cold light as he stared at Feng Jiuru. Feng Jiuru's expression froze. She cupped her hands and said awkwardly, so it's Mountain Master Bai Yun. Please forgive me. How about I kill you? Yun Peng asked simply again. Even though it was the same question, everyone shuddered. They suddenly felt like Yun Peng was like a half-drawn sword. He began to emit a faint killing intent, and the surrounding temperature dropped slightly. Feng Jiuru slowly retreated with a stiff expression. Mountain Master Bai Yun, my heartless palace doesn't seem to have any grudges with you. Why do you have to bully us? Her disciple, Sun Luan, also retreated with a pale face. Yu Qianqiu looked at Yun Peng with admiration. He thought to himself, so it's more frightening when you speak in a straightforward manner. Stop. A cold shout suddenly reverberated in the air. For streams of light descended and appeared. Wei Chuanxiu walked out from the group of four and came to Yu Qianqiu's side. He pointed at the thin golden-robed man and said, I've invited the Chamber of Commerce Alliance's great bright will-bearer to uphold justice. Yu Qianqiu immediately bowed. He had heard of this man but had never seen him. He knew that this man was the Chamber of Commerce Alliance's leader. After Yun Peng and the thin man exchanged a glance, they turned into streams of light and returned to the World Commerce Alliance's rooftop. It was obvious that Yun Peng was unwilling to face this man. Feng Jiuru heaved a sigh of relief. She quickly cupped her hands and bowed to the thin man. Greetings, great bright will-bearer. Sun Luan also bowed. When Wei Chuanxiu saw Feng Jiuru, he immediately pointed at her and shouted, Little B****, how dare you jump on my head? If I had known this would happen, I wouldn't have let you go back then. I would have killed you directly. Everyone immediately heard a story from his words. The corner of Feng Jiuru's mouth twitched. Seeing the great bright will beside her, she knew that nothing would happen. She immediately gathered her courage and shouted, Bat King Wei, please watch your mouth. Wow! Now it's terrible. Wei Chuanxiu let out a strange cry. He flipped his claws out of his sleeves and disappeared on the spot. As Feng Jiuru turned pale with fright, she saw the great bright wheel's golden sleeve point out 2 fingers, and a dazzling silver plate with a diameter of 2 meters suddenly appeared from the fingertips, like a bright moon, protecting Feng Jiuru. Dong! A muffled sound rang out. Although it was not loud, it seemed to pierce through everyone's eardrums, causing them to tremble and go limp. The silver plate suddenly flashed with a strong white light, bouncing back a green light. When the green light appeared, Wei Chuanxiu could not control his body and slid backward. His feet were like iron plows, creating a deep ravine. Chapter 879. A white light flashed and the bright moon disappeared. Deming Luan said indifferently, Wei Chuanxiu, do you think I'm a decoration? Wei Chuanxiu waved his sleeves and forcefully stopped. His thighs had already sunk into the ground. Then, he jumped out and pointed at Feng Jiuru, Deming Luan, this bastard sent people to World Commerce Hall to smash and rob, and you didn't care. Instead, you attacked me. Is this the rule of your Commerce Hall alliance? Deming Luan crossed his sleeves over his stomach and said indifferently, if you want to solve it yourself, why did you have to drag me out? Wei Chuanxiu's neck thickened and he wanted to argue, but he was pulled back by Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu pointed at the trench in the ground and said painfully, who did I offend? There are always people coming to make trouble when I establish World Commerce Hall. It's fine if Heartless Palace came to make trouble, but why did you join in as well? A good piece of land was turned into this by you. Are you going to pay for the repair? Wei Chuanxiu's expression froze and he said in shock, look at the situation now, you still care about this little bit of money? Everyone was speechless. Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes and said, if it wasn't for money, why would I waste so much effort to establish this commerce hall? At this time, there was a slight commotion in the crowd in the air. Several figures landed on the ground. They were none other than the representatives sent by Wan Gu Tong and the other 3 sects, Wan Ling and Du Kairen, who brought their disciples. World Commerce Hall's opening has alarmed De Ming Luan's representative. Du Kairen said in surprise. He had already cupped his hands in greeting. He wasn't pretending to be surprised, but he really didn't expect the representative of the Commerce Hall Alliance to come. The others also followed suit and saluted. However, their attention was soon attracted by the exposed corpses on the ground. They looked at Yu Qianqiu with complicated expressions. De Ming Luan nodded slightly and said, "What are you 4 sects doing here? Are you here to congratulate the opening of World Commerce Hall?" Du Karen's representative answered, "Manager is wise. We are here to congratulate Yu Qianqiu on the opening of the World Chamber of Commerce." The others also nodded in agreement. When he said this, the expressions of everyone present varied. The De Ming Luan looked at Yu Qianqiu with deep meaning. Feng Jiuru, on the other hand, had a gloomy expression on her face as she kept her mouth shut. It was obvious that these families were not giving her any face. Yu Qianqiu immediately cupped his hands and laughed. "Welcome. Welcome. A warm welcome. Please come inside. I will go and thank you after I have settled a small matter here. Hu Changshu, Yunnan Tian, come and entertain the guests." While speaking, he nodded to Shui Mingqing and the other friends. The gate, which was blocked by the lords of the kingdoms, was suddenly empty. The 2 groups of people with big red flowers on their chests formed an 8 shape again. Hu Changshu and Yunnan Tian came together and waved their hands to invite the guests. Huo Lianxing waved his hand and said, "There's no need to stand on ceremony. Since it is just a small matter, it is fine for us to wait." Yu Qianqiu, why did people die here? What exactly happened? This question was a little fake. Everyone knew that these people couldn't possibly not know what happened here. Yu Qianqiu chuckled and said, "My World Commerce Association is opening for business today, and a few scum who don't know the immensity of heaven and earth suddenly came to my place to smash and rob. I naturally couldn't sit by idly and immediately took countermeasures. Who knew that these people couldn't take a beating and spilled everything in order to save their lives? So there is a mastermind behind this. Such a thing actually happened in the hallucinatory Immortal City?" Yafuzi looked at Yu Qianqiu with a frown and said, "Who is the mastermind? Who is so daring? They simply don't put the rules of the Chamber of Commerce Alliance in their eyes." Yu Qianqiu opened his claw and took a head from the ground into his hand. He lifted it up and said, "This person said that they were sent by Feng Jiuru, the elder of Heartless Palace. Nonsense." Feng Jiuru immediately roared and defended herself, "Don't listen to his nonsense. This brat is deliberately framing me. I didn't do such a thing at all." De Ming Luan said calmly, "Since you didn't do it, then let him finish. The truth can't be faked, the lies can't be true. No one can frame you." Once he spoke, Feng Jiuru immediately lost her temper. She could only grit her teeth and stare at Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu coughed and continued while holding the head. He said that Feng Jiuru, the elder of Heartless Palace, was not only the mastermind behind this matter, but also the one who caused trouble during my World Chamber of Commerce's recruitment last time. He also said that not only that, Feng Jiuru also sent a warning letter to the various sects, threatening them not to come and support my World Chamber of Commerce. She wants to make a fool out of us. Just as he finished speaking, he heard Du Kairen sneer and say, "I don't know about the other things, but Elder Feng sent a warning letter to my spirit cultivation sect. I can testify to this. As for whether or not he warned the other sects, we'll have to ask everyone. My Skyward Palace also received Elder Feng's warning." Yafuzi said indifferently. Huo Lianxing nodded and said, "My Mythical Fire Palace also received it." Wan Ling cupped her fists and smiled. "Elder Feng also took care of my Wan Gu Tong." After these people interjected for a while, the onlookers immediately sighed. This undoubtedly proved that Feng Jiuru was the one who did all these things, and they all thought that Feng Jiuru was going to be in trouble this time. Feng Jiuru's expression also changed greatly. She realized that sending a warning letter to the various sects was indeed too stupid. For a moment, she was very nervous and couldn't help but secretly observe the changes in Deming Luan's expression. Wei Chuanxiu stared at Feng Jiuru with a sneer. Although Yu Qianqiu had a sincere expression, he was also gloating in his heart. He thought to himself, this is the result of provoking me. However, to everyone's surprise, Deming Luan looked around and said, I've also heard about Feng Jiuru sending a letter to threaten the various sections. Moreover, there are so many witnesses, it seems like it's not fake. The conflict between your sects and the various merchant houses has never stopped. It's normal for threats to come and go. As long as you don't violate the rules of the illusionary Immortal City, my merchant house alliance won't interfere. If we want to interfere, we will only interfere with those who brazenly violate the rules. Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu was pondering what these words meant when he suddenly heard someone calling him. He immediately cupped his fists and said, Here. Other than your World Merchant House's people, did anyone else see these dead people smashing and robbing in your World Merchant House? Deming Luan asked. Yu Qianqiu was startled and felt that something was wrong. He looked around and it seemed too late to find an outsider to testify. He gritted his teeth and replied, I don't know if anyone else saw it. I'm afraid that even if someone saw it, they would be afraid of Heartless Palace's despotic power and wouldn't dare to stand out to testify. Deming Luan lowered his eyes and sighed softly. Since there are no outsiders to testify, why did you kill all these people? Even if only one was left alive, he would be a good witness. Now that there are no witnesses, do you want me to believe your World Merchant House's side of the story? As soon as these words came out, everyone immediately felt the wind change. Feng Jiuru's expression was somewhat overjoyed. She didn't know why this person in charge of the Merchant House Alliance wanted to help her. They had never interacted before. Could it be that he had a deep relationship with the sect? At this point, Deming Luan's calm tone suddenly became stern. In the future, don't bother me with things without evidence. I'm not a selfless judge and don't have the time to distinguish right from wrong. My Merchant House Alliance knows what to do. Now that someone has pulled me here, I can't just go back without doing anything. Because what I'm seeing now is someone brazenly violating the Merchant House Alliance's rules. Yu Qianqiu. How dare you kill people in hallucinatory Immortal City twice in a row? Are you looking down on my Merchant House Alliance's rules? Everyone was silent. Du Kairan and the others who had come to see Feng Jiuru's misfortune were all stunned. Feng Jiuru's spirits rose. She didn't expect that she would gain the upper hand in the blink of an eye. Yu Qianqiu was a little dumbfounded. How did the ending turn out like this? He immediately cupped his hands and explained, Leader is wise. My World Merchant House only wants to do business honestly. However, the wind won't stop when the tree desires peace. Seeing that someone has come to kill my World Merchant House, can't my World Merchant House protect itself? Did I say that you can't protect yourself? On Deming Luan's thin face, under his thick eyebrows, his eyelids flickered with a bright light. He said in an imposing manner, You have Wei Chuanxiu and Yun Peng here. Is there a need to kill a few soul formation cultivators? You don't even want to leave any evidence that's beneficial to you. Do you want my Merchant House Alliance to work for you? Do you think the Merchant House Alliance is something you can order around? Ask the entire immortal world if there's such a good thing. His words made Yu Qianqiu speechless. He could see that Feng Jiuru had already made up his mind. No matter how glib your tongue was, Feng Jiuru had everything under his control. The situation was completely under his control. It was useless no matter how you tried to reason with him. Feng Jiuru had absolute strength. If he said that Yu Qianqiu was wrong, then Yu Qianqiu was wrong. If he said that Feng Jiuru was wrong, then she definitely couldn't be right either. This was what it meant to be a king. All ghosts and monsters couldn't withstand a single blow. But this way, Wei Chuanxiu couldn't take it anymore. He shouted, Deming Luan, according to what you said, we can't get away with killing people in self-defense? Deming Luan looked at him and said indifferently, Since there is indeed a reason for this, I won't pursue it. But He suddenly opened his eyes and glanced at the crowd. If anyone dares to disregard the rules of the Merchant House Alliance again, I don't care who is right or wrong, I will punish them severely. Everyone was shocked when they heard this. Yu Qianqiu smiled bitterly in his heart. What a powerful guy. He and Feng Jiuru had been arguing for a long time, but neither of them had gained the upper hand. Instead, he had let everyone see his majesty and took the opportunity to warn everyone. Wei Chuanxiu, who was ready to argue with De Mingluan, was also speechless. He didn't expect De Mingluan to pick it up and then put it down gently. He was so angry that he couldn't do anything about it. He couldn't say what he wanted to say to Feng Jiuru with De Mingluan. Chapter 880. She didn't even look for your World Chamber of Commerce to settle the score, so how could you expect her to look for Feng Jiuru? Wei Chuanxiu stared at the big Ming Luan, the mustache on his lips trembling. He then raised his head to look at Yun Peng, who had left the building as soon as possible. He realized that Yun Peng was still the smart one, trying his best not to interact with the big Ming Luan. At this moment, a flying shuttle flying above the World Commerce Chamber of Commerce attracted everyone's attention. The flying shuttle slowly descended, and on it stood two golden-robed men and a petite beautiful woman. Yu Qianqiu, who had been tormented to the point of losing his temper, was slightly startled. He couldn't help exchanging glances with Shui Mingqing and the others because the woman standing on the flying shuttle was none other than Mu Tianjiao of the Four Links Chamber of Commerce. When Mu Tianjiao saw Yu Qianqiu, she smiled sweetly and nodded. Her gaze fell on the corpse on the ground, and she couldn't help but be stunned. When she saw that there were people wearing the clothes of the Immortal Palace present, she was even more baffled. After the three of them got off the flying shuttle, one of the golden-robed men whispered a few words to Mu Tianjiao, while the other quickly put away the flying shuttle. The three of them walked together to the Great Bright Wheel and saluted, "Greetings, Great Bright Wheel Bearer." De Mingluan nodded slightly and looked at Mu Tianjiao suspiciously. "This young lady looks unfamiliar. May I know who you are?" There were too many people in the Immortal Palace. He didn't even know who the two golden-robed men were, let alone Mu Tianjiao, because he had never seen her before. "This junior is Mu Tianjiao of the Four Links Chamber of Commerce." Mu Tianjiao bowed respectfully. As soon as these words were spoken, the surroundings immediately became restless. It turned out that this woman was the woman of the Immortal Palace's External Affairs Commander Wu Xiong. Those who didn't know her immediately memorized Mu Tianjiao's appearance so that they wouldn't do anything stupid in the future. Hui Yunlong and Du Feng's expressions were somewhat bitter. "Oh." De Mingluan immediately understood and said with a faint smile, "So it is Wu Xiong's wife. There is no need to say junior. Wu Xiong and I have a close relationship and we are all on the same side. If you continue to call yourself junior, Wu Xiong will realize that he is a generation lower than you and will not be happy." He. "Why are you here?" A complicated look flashed across Mu Tianjiao's eyes. She cupped her hands and said, "Yu Qianqiu and I are friends. I heard that the World Chamber of Commerce is opening, so I came to congratulate you." Hearing this, many people felt a chill in their hearts. They no longer dared to look down on Yu Qianqiu. This Yu Qianqiu had undoubtedly formed a relationship with Wu Xiong. De Mingluan was startled. After sizing up Yu Qianqiu, he smiled and said, "Since that's the case, I won't disturb you any longer. When you have time, come visit the Chamber of Commerce Alliance." After greeting them, he glanced at Wei Chunqiu and left with his two subordinates. As soon as he left, the oppressive atmosphere immediately became relaxed. Yu Qianqiu winked at Hu Changshou and Yunan Tian, and the two of them immediately went to deal with the bodies on the ground. Meanwhile, Yu Qianqiu smiled and cupped his hands at the people who came to congratulate him. "Thank you for your support. Please come in." The few of them looked at Mu Tianjiao, wanting her to leave first. Although her cultivation wasn't much, her current status was extraordinary. Mu Tianjiao looked at Yu Qianqiu with a smile. She took out a gift box from her storage bracelet and offered it to him. "This is a small token of my appreciation. I wish Sec Master you luck in opening the Chamber of Commerce." He. I've spent a lot of money, a lot of money. Yu Qianqiu smiled as he received it with both hands. He inadvertently touched a few of Mu Tianjiao's fingers. He didn't feel anything, but Mu Tianjiao's hand trembled slightly. Just as Yu Qianqiu stuffed the gift box into his storage pouch, Wan Ling also came over with a gift box. She said with a smile, just a little something. Sect Master Yu, the World Chamber of Commerce's business is booming. Then, Shui Mingqing, Hui Yunlong, and Du Feng also presented their congratulatory gifts. Yu Qianqiu smiled like a flower and thanked them profusely. You're too polite. Please come in. Everyone, please come in. He waved his hand and impolitely stuffed the gifts into his storage pouch. Under his guidance, the people who came to congratulate him stepped into the building curiously. Wei Chuanxiu didn't leave. He stared at Feng Jiu-ru and warned her with a voice transmission, "You're lucky today. If you have the ability, you can hide in the hallucinatory Immortal City for the rest of your life. If you dare to take one step out of the hallucinatory Immortal City, I'll immediately cut off your head to use as a cushion." Feng Jiu-ru's expression was dark and gloomy as she gritted her teeth. She had lost a lot of face today and had undoubtedly lost the face of the Heartless Palace. If the sect got wind of this, they would inevitably be out of luck. Not only that, Wei Chuanxiu just had to threaten to kill her. Since that was the case, no one would have an easy time. Feng Jiu-ru slowly put her hands behind her back. Her gaze swept across the 4 island sect masters in the sky and she calmly transmitted her voice to them. Now it's your turn to make a move. Whoever kills Yu Qianqiu can obtain this territory. My Heartless Palace will also strongly support his development. Lan Hao and the other 3 looked at each other with an indescribably bitter expression. Everyone had seen everything that had just happened. Even Feng Jiu-ru herself couldn't do anything to the World Chamber of Commerce, so what could they do? That's right, the rules of the Chamber of Commerce Alliance allowed a sect master to challenge another sect master. But if they really did such a thing, judging from Wei Bat King's temper, he definitely wouldn't let it go. Excluding this point, even Wu Xiong's wife had come to support Yu Qianqiu. Could they afford to offend such a person? What? Are you afraid, or do you want to go back on your word? Feng Jiu-ru warned sternly. Either you didn't agree to me in the first place, or don't even think about going back on your word. Otherwise, don't even think about returning to the 4 islands of Lake Light. I'll send people to take good care of your families. This was a naked threat. The 4 of them were shocked when they heard this. Lan Hao replied angrily, "Elder Feng, aren't you going too far by doing this? Is this your personal intention or the intention of the Heartless Palace? Heartless Palace is the #1 sect in the immortal world. I've never heard of Heartless Palace using other people's families to threaten people. There aren't many reasons." Feng Jiu-ru indifferently said, "If anyone can kill Yu Qianqiu while challenging him, not only can they obtain this mountain, I will also do my best to facilitate the unification of the 4 islands of Lake Light. From then on, there will only be one sect master in charge of the 4 islands of Lake Light. That's all I have to say. Do as you see fit." As soon as she finished speaking, Feng Jiu-ru suddenly looked into the sky. She saw figures landing one after another. Judging by their clothes, they were obviously disciples from various sections. She even knew many of them. They were all walking towards the entrance of the World Commerce Association. The 2 rows of people at the entrance with big red flowers on their chests hurriedly welcomed them. Feng Jiu-ru was so angry that she almost vomited blood. This was called a broken drum beating. Those sects who were watching at first saw that the World Commerce Association had stabilized the situation and immediately came to join in the fun. Every time they went to a sect, it was undoubtedly a slap to Feng Jiu-ru's face. Feng Jiu-ru angrily stared at the 4 sect masters of the 4 islands of Lake Light. Inside the lobby, there was a pool decorated with mountain spring water. There were fluorescent stones at the bottom of the pool, allowing people to clearly see the small fish swimming in it. There were crystal counters all around. All kinds of immortal herbs lay quietly inside. There were also fluorescent stones placed sporadically in the cabinets. It looked very beautiful. Yu Qianqiu used the layout of the exhibition hall from his previous life. He especially strengthened the lighting effect created by the fluorescent stones. Those who had never come in before would have their eyes light up when they saw it for the first time. This kind of environment was the most attractive to women. Wan Ling and Mu Tianjiao's eyes lit up when they walked in. They kept shaking their heads as they looked around. Every time they walked in front of a crystal cabinet, the two girls' attention wasn't on the immortal herbs inside. Instead, they were more focused on admiring the psychedelic colors reflected by the fluorescent stones and the crystal cabinet. The only fly in the ointment was that there had been some fighting in the lobby. Some places had already been damaged, but they had already been cleaned up. A few of the men who had come to support Yu Qianqiu saw the decorations inside, and their expressions became solemn. They could all see the value of this place, and it would definitely increase people's desire to buy it. Thus, they began to carefully observe every layout in the building. The desire to learn was in their eyes. You made the decorations here? Mu Tianjiao asked Yu Qianqiu, who was leading the way and introducing the place. He. The entire World Commerce Chamber of Commerce worked together. Yu Qianqiu said disapprovingly as they walked. Mu Tianjiao didn't think that his subordinates would have such foresight. She smiled and said, I really couldn't tell. First there were waterfalls, then there were tall buildings, and now there are these attractive decorations. You really are extraordinary. Yu Qianqiu casually said a few polite words and laughed it off. However, it was precisely because of this conversation that Mu Tianjiao took a few more glances at his subordinates. She immediately discovered that many of them were acquaintances she had seen before. This discovery surprised Mu Tianjiao a little because she had seen some of them in the Divine Ruin Realm. Weren't they people that Shui Mingqing had gathered from various sects to help? How did they become Yu Qianqiu's subordinates? Shui Mingqing, Hui Yunlong, and Du Feng didn't pay attention at first. As faces flashed past their eyes, they gradually recognized some people. The two of them looked at each other in dismay. Shui Mingqing was a little nervous, afraid of being exposed. Fortunately, neither Wan Ling nor Master Yi knew these people. Yu Qianqiu had just led these people to the staircase and was about to take them to the second floor to continue their tour when they suddenly heard a faint voice saying, "Welcome," from outside. Everyone stopped and looked over. They saw a large group of people walking in. After coming in, they began to look at the crystal cabinets. They didn't look like people who were going to cause trouble. Huo Lianxing laughed and said, "It seems that all the sects have sent people to support us. I reckon that Feng Jiuru's expression isn't good right now." Who knew that just as he finished speaking, a loud shout suddenly came from outside, "Yu Qianqiu, come out! Yu Qianqiu, come out!" It was shouted several times in a row. It seemed that several people were shouting at the same time, causing the lobby to reverberate continuously. Clearly, they were using their cultivation to make this sound. Damn it! Who is wailing like ghosts and howling like wolves? Yu Qianqiu muttered. The voice was very unfamiliar, so it should be someone he didn't know. He quickly rushed out of the lobby and saw 4 people standing in a row not far from the door, looking at him. The various feudal lords outside the door also indicated that it was them. Yu Qianqiu couldn't help but frown and ask, "Why did you call me out?" You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.